Chapter 1437. Crack, crack! The blood-colored energy on his body started to disintegrate inch by inch. Xue Dezu's face finally revealed an expression of shock and anger. He didn't expect Yixuan to force him to such an extent. Blood God Domain! At this time, a blood-colored domain instantly appeared beside him. A domain appeared with his body as the center, and he stood in the middle of the battlefield, just like a blood-colored god. His puppets were all around him, endless. They were the warriors whose essence had been sucked dry by him in the past. Some were from the human race, and some were from the devil race. At this time, they lined up like an army. Countless Blood Clan puppets started to pounce towards Yixuan. These people all had blood-red eyes. Their faces were incomparably ferocious, and their fangs were sharp. It seemed as if they wanted to bite Yixuan to death. Yixuan felt that he had completely fallen into a blood-colored energy frenzy. It made it impossible for his speed to be as fast as before. So strong! He's only at the second level of the heaven realm, but he's already so strong. That deputy leader from before is completely different. Yixuan was secretly shocked. At this moment, the fiery long saber in his hand could no longer cut into Xue Dezu's body. The blood-colored energy on Xue Dezu's body seemed to have been greatly strengthened by the blood god domain. He only snorted coldly, and Yixuan was shaken away. I want to see what other tricks you have up your sleeves! At this moment, Xue Dezu sneered. There was a faint trace of greed in his eyes as he looked at Yixuan. Yixuan could be considered as tyrannical to want to turn him into a puppet. If he could capture him and turn him into a puppet, his blood god domain would become even more powerful. Xue Dezu sneered. Whoosh! 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 The fiery long saber in Yixuan's hand continued to wave, and the army of corpses that pounced towards him exploded. Although these corpses were no match for him, there were too many of them, and they were almost densely packed together. In just a moment, they had already pounced in front of him. A few of them even opened their huge fangs and directly bit towards Yixuan. The powerful aura on his body had a fatal attraction to them. Clang! 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 These dried corpses directly bit his body, but they couldn't even bite through his skin. Yixuan sneered. He had painstakingly cultivated his tyrant body to this level. If he couldn't even resist this level, then wouldn't he have cultivated in vain? Every time one of the dried corpses bit down, the sound of metal clashing could be heard. Boom! The power of wind and thunder instantly swept out from Yixuan's body. The power of the ninth heaven Xianlei was the most restrained of these evil things. The Xue ancestor seemed to have realized that these dried corpses couldn't pose any fatal threat to Yixuan. So, he decided to take action himself. Reckless fool! Although I don't know how your blood energy could be so strong, you clearly haven't stepped into the sky-human realm. You haven't stepped into the sky-human realm, yet you want to fight me? You really don't know the meaning of death. He casually grabbed an infinite amount of blood-colored energy and blasted it towards Yixuan. Yixuan continuously slashed with the flaming long saber in his hand, but every time they collided, there would be a sound of metal clashing. However, Yixuan's flaming long saber couldn't cut through the blood-colored protective energy in Xue ancestor's body, even with the help of the mystical flame. This energy was very strange. Otherwise, it would be impossible to resist Yixuan's mystical flame. After all, it was very rare to cultivate a tyrant body to this level. However, Yixuan didn't fall into a disadvantageous position. Although he couldn't cut through the blood-colored energy, he didn't show any signs of losing. This was already shocking enough. Many experts saw this scene, and they could also see that Yixuan hadn't stepped into the sky-human realm. This was because it was very obvious, and it couldn't be disguised. However, even so, Yixuan was still able to fight against Xue ancestor, who was at the second level of the sky-human realm, without falling into a disadvantageous position. Just thinking about it made people feel abnormally terrified. In an instant, over 1,000 moves had been exchanged. The more Xue ancestor fought, the more shocked he became. He originally thought that with his cultivation, Unless his opponent was at the third level of the sky-human realm, there was no way he could be his opponent. Not to mention this half-step celestial realm kid. However, Yishiwen seemed to have overturned his thoughts about half-step celestial realm. A half-step celestial realm could actually be so fierce. No one knew if he still had any trump cards that he hadn't used yet. This was simply too terrifying. The power of wind and thunder wrapped around Yishiwen's body, causing his speed to rise to a whole new level. His previous speed was already very fast, but the blood ancestor was still able to suppress him by a notch. But now, he had completely caught up to the blood ancestor's speed. Ha! Even within Shui ancestor's blood god domain, Yishiwen's speed was still astonishing. Ordinary people couldn't lock onto his figure at all. Only those celestial realm experts could lock onto his figure with their divine senses. However, ordinary celestial realm experts could only barely see Yishiwen's figure, and they couldn't see it clearly. So fast. Is this really something that a half-step celestial realm can do? Li Hongxiu looked at Yishiwen in disbelief. Although she had invited Yishiwen back, she didn't notice that Yishiwen wasn't even in the celestial realm. That was because the great demon commander couldn't even force Yishiwen to use his full strength, let alone force him to use his true realm. But now, Shui ancestor had done it and forced Yishiwen to use his true cultivation. This was even more shocking. If a half-step celestial realm expert could do this, then wouldn't they, the celestial realm experts, die of shame? This is obviously not an ordinary person. I'm afraid he is also a top heaven's pride cultivated by a big family. The old servant, Uncle Lin, could only barely lock onto Yishiwen with his divine senses. We are really lucky to be able to invite such a person. Yes, it must be the blessing of our ancestors. Otherwise, how could we have invited him? At this time, even Li Hongxiu nodded slightly. And the experts of various forces who were paying attention to this matter were even more shocked. It was not surprising that Shui ancestor could do this because he was a blood race expert who was known for his speed. Moreover, his cultivation had already entered the second heaven of the celestial realm. However, Yishiwen was only in the half-step celestial realm middle stage. Yishiwen's speed was getting faster and faster. The power of wind and thunder entangled his body more and more tightly. The fiery long blade in his hand was constantly chopping down, and it was simply pulling out after images in the sky. In the eyes of many people, Yishiwen was simply densely packed in all directions, and the sky was filled with him. Every Yishiwen was chopping down at Yishiwen, and every time Yishiwen disappeared, another would appear in his place. Shui the ancestor roared again and again. However, no matter how hard he tried to defend, Yishiwen's speed was too fast. Yishiwen's attacks continued to land on his body. The blood-colored energy on his body was also clearly diminishing. Yishiwen waited quietly. He was very patient, and he kept chopping down. He did not believe that the blood-colored energy could be maintained like this forever. Sure enough, after thousands of experiments, the blood-colored energy had clearly weakened a lot. Bastard! Shui ancestor kept roaring. He had already guessed Yishiwen's intention, but there was no way he could do it. Although his speed was very fast, Yishiwen's speed was faintly surpassing his. Moreover, this was in his blood god domain. If it was not in the domain, he could not imagine what kind of terrifying scene this would be. I don't believe that I can't catch you. At this time, he no longer passively let go. The blood-colored energy on his body turned into densely packed lines in the void, and instantly penetrated into the void. Although Yishiwen's speed was extremely fast, and it was impossible to see through him, he still had a physical body. So, he would definitely come into contact with these densely packed blood-colored lines as long as he moved. Sure enough, this method was very useful. He had grasped Yishiwen's trajectory in an instant. Blood terror! Shui ancestor smiled sinisterly, and suddenly clawed down, shattering the vast sky. This claw of his condensed the cultivation of his entire body. He wanted to launch a final attack on Yishiwen, and thoroughly kill him. Even the sky could be shattered by his claw. Mountains, rivers, sun, and Moon couldn't resist his claw attack. Clang! The 8 Treasures Universe Cauldron appeared in Yishuan's body almost instantly. It automatically protected his body, and protected him within it. The 8 Treasures Universe Cauldron shook violently, but it still wasn't broken by Shui Ancestor's claw. Yishuan once again attacked Shui Ancestor while holding the 8 Treasures Universe Cauldron. Moreover, it was a tit-for-tat confrontation. Shui Ancestor was so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. He had never fought such a battle before. He had never encountered such an opponent. He had encountered experts who were more powerful than Yishuan. However, none of them were as difficult to deal with as Yishuan. Yishuan was simply too difficult to break. The 8 Treasures Universe Cauldron was like a huge tortoise's shell to him. He couldn't break it, and he was extremely depressed. However, he couldn't do anything about it because Yishuan was like a maggot in his tarsal bone. Yishuan wasn't giving him any breathing space. Ha ha ha, Shui Ancestor, is this your strength? You're only SOSO. It seems that you can only dream if you want me to be your puppet. Yishuan laughed loudly. The flaming saber in his hand started to burn crazily, and burned the entire void. Chapter 1438. Then, why don't you give it a try? Shui the Ancestor roared as he pounced towards Yishuan. His claw cracked, and the 8 Treasure Universe Cauldron that was protecting Yishuan's body began to crack. Yishuan's counterattack arrived in the blink of an eye, and another saber slashed down. Shui the Ancestor immediately dodged. He didn't dare to take Yishuan's attack head-on. The reason was simple. The blood-colored energy on his body was just as Yishuan had imagined. It couldn't possibly be endless. Both of them were extremely fast. No one could catch their movements. However, Yishuan was able to keep up with Shui de Zhu's speed. He hadn't unfurled his storm wings yet. However, this speed was enough for him to keep up with. Boom! Yishuan slashed out with his saber, but this time, it didn't land on Shui the Ancestor's body. Instead, it directly blasted on Shui the Ancestor's blood god domain. Boom! The entire domain was blasted into 2 halves on the spot. Shui the Ancestor's blood-colored energy clearly wasn't enough to completely protect him and the blood god domain. Therefore, he could only protect himself now. Therefore, he couldn't protect his domain at all. Yishuan's saber slashed open the domain on the spot, and countless dried corpses screamed as they were blasted to death on the spot. Shui the Ancestor couldn't help but scream as his domain was broken, and he retreated again and again. However, Yishuan's attacks were like a storm, and they were incomparably fast. Moreover, the heaven-grade-long saber in his hand was constantly blasting out. His entire body had been completely buried in the flames, and he looked like a man on fire. He held the heaven-grade-long saber in his hand, and countless laws were entwined on it. He slashed down fiercely, and countless saber lights converged into boundless waves under the saber's edge. They bombarded the blood god domain, and instantly annihilated the blood-colored kingdom. Impossible! You're just a half-step celestial realm expert. How can you be so strong? Who are you? How can you be so strong? Shui the Ancestor roared in horror. Yishuan sneered and said, A dead man doesn't need to know anything. The fiery long blade in his hand was constantly bombarding his domain. However, Shui the Ancestor could only watch on helplessly. Once he split his blood-colored energy, it wouldn't be enough to protect his body. However, if he wanted to protect his body, he wouldn't be able to protect his domain. Right now, he was in a dilemma. Shui the Ancestor was in a dilemma. However, once the domain collapsed, his overall strength would undoubtedly fall to a whole new level. This was something he absolutely did not wish to see. This was a dilemma. Boom! Finally, under Yishuan's continuous bombardment, the blood god's domain that had enveloped the entire void finally couldn't hold on any longer, and collapsed with a loud bang. They were completely routed. At this time, Yishuan took advantage of the situation and instantly rushed to Shui the Ancestor's side. At this time, without the obstruction of the blood god's domain, Yishuan was simply unimpeded. In an instant, he had already pounced in front of Shue the Ancestor. Without the obstruction of the Blood God's domain, Yi Shiwen's speed increased by another level. He was even stronger than before. Even Shue the Ancestor, who had always been known for his speed, had no way to completely see Yi Shiwen's movements. Whoosh! Yi Shiwen had already blasted in front of him in an instant, and the fiery long blade in his hand had completely slashed down. Crack, crack! Shue the Ancestor, who had completely resisted Yi Shiwen's blade, had exhausted all of his blood-colored energy in an instant. His entire body was blasted away. The blood-colored energy in his body wasn't endless. On the contrary, the blood-colored energy in his body originally belonged to those whose blood essence he had sucked dry. That bit of true spirit had fused with the blood essence to form this blood-colored energy. It was precisely this blood-colored energy that he had relied on to exhaust the president of the Heavenly Fire Chamber of Commerce, whose cultivation was almost the same as his, to death. Who would have thought that he would encounter a freak like Yi Shiwen? From the start, there was simply no problem with exhaustion. Yi Shiwen had forcefully broken through his defense. Puff! He spat out a mouthful of blood. He could no longer maintain this appearance. His fangs had completely grown out, and his skin was abnormally dry. He no longer had the demeanor of a nobleman of the night. He was simply a monster with a human form. With just one slash, he had been severely injured by Yi Shiwen. His eyes were filled with horror, just like those whose blood he had sucked dry in the past. It was a fear of death that no one could avoid. Originally, he had thought that he had seen through life and death. But in this moment, he was still incomparably terrified. Whoosh! Yi Shiwen's next wave of attack arrived in the blink of an eye. The fiery long blade in his hand once again slashed down. Boom! Shue the Ancestor was blasted away once again. He no longer had the strength to resist. His body was also becoming weaker and weaker. His tough body was directly smashed into pieces, and blood spurted out like a fountain. Whoosh! A flash of blade light came down, and he was cleaved into two on the spot. Without the protection of the bloody power, he wouldn't be able to resist for long in front of Yi Shiwen. His speed might be comparable to Yi Shiwen's, but his strength was far worse than Yi Shiwen's. This was the fatal gap between them. It's over? Everyone was a little dumbfounded as they looked at this scene. Shue the Ancestor, who was famous in Chaos City for countless years, was actually beheaded. His body was taken into Tianyuan Mirror by Yi Shiwen. Out of the 10 masters of the second sky of Celestial Realm, 2 had been completed. According to this speed, perhaps one day he could complete this task. But 2 years, he only had 2 years. Time waits for no man. Yi Shiwen withdrew his power and returned to the Sky Fire Chamber of Commerce's lodging in Chaos City. Immediately, he felt those prying eyes retract from the lake. Before, they were unscrupulous because they didn't take Yi Shiwen seriously. But now that Yi Shiwen had displayed such a strong side, they naturally didn't dare to continue to spy on him. Thank you, sir, for avenging my father! Li Hongxiu immediately knelt down. Not only Li Hongxiu, but other members of Skyfire Shanghai also knelt down one after another. Thank you, sir, for avenging the president! The cheers were earth-shattering. Skyfire Chamber of Commerce had been oppressed by Devil Flame Chamber of Commerce for a long time. Now, they finally had the time to hold their heads high. With the death of Shue the Ancestor, the collapse of Devil Flame Chamber of Commerce was only a matter of time. Compared to the human race, the demon race was even more cruel and bloodthirsty. Moreover, they did not have the concept of loyalty. They were all arrogant and unruly. Without a strong master to suppress them, they would have long since scattered. If it was Devil Flame Chamber of Commerce that had been oppressed for so long like Skyfire Chamber of Commerce had been, it would have long since collapsed. The news of Yi Shiwen killing the Shue the Ancestor quickly spread throughout Chaos City, and immediately caused a huge sensation. In particular, the fact that Yi Shiwen had forcefully resisted the Shue the Ancestor's blood-colored energy and killed him on the spot attracted the attention of countless people. Skyfire Chamber of Commerce also turned over a new leaf because of this victory. With such a master overseeing things, apart from the other 9 major forces, who would dare to casually touch Skyfire Chamber of Commerce's people? On the other side, Devil Flame Chamber of Commerce was in a state of anxiety, afraid that Yishiwen would come to kill them. And just as many people expected, without Shue the ancestor, Devil Flame Chamber of Commerce fell apart almost overnight. When the tree falls, the monkeys scatter. After their assets were divided, they were swept away by several Celestial Realm elders. They didn't dare to stay in Chaos City. Who knew when Yishiwen, this killer, would think of this matter and come to settle the score with them? Yishiwen had become a famous expert in Chaos City almost overnight by stepping on his ancestors' blood. Many people were also curious about what kind of conditions Skyfire Chamber of Commerce had used to invite such an expert to join them. There were all kinds of speculations. But soon, everyone's attention was diverted. The land of Bedlam was about to open, and Skyfire Chamber of Commerce and Demon Flame Chamber of Commerce were fighting so hard for this opening. Following the opening of the land of Bedlam, everyone in Chaos City began to connect with each other. Although only the 10 major forces had the keys to the land of Bedlam, others could still follow them. Among the 10 major forces, only Skyfire Chamber of Commerce was relatively deserted. Previously, no one was optimistic about them. Everyone thought that Devil Flame Chamber of Commerce would replace them, so these people either went to the other 9 major forces or followed Devil Flame Chamber of Commerce. So at this time, after Skyfire Chamber of Commerce unexpectedly obtained victory, it was suddenly deserted. Time was too short, and there was no time to connect. The land of Bedlam had already opened. Inside the building, Yishiwen was sitting cross-legged on a praying mat, breathing in and out the essence of heaven and earth. Outside the courtyard, footsteps were heard. Li Hongxiu and Uncle Lin strode in. "Mr. Wen, this is the amethyst glazed fruit we agreed on." Li Hongxiu handed over a brocade box, which contained the amethyst glazed fruit they had agreed to give to Yishiwen. Yishiwen took a look at the amethyst glazed fruit in the brocade box. This brocade box was also specially made to prevent the lingqi from leaking out. Yishiwen immediately put it away. "I'm very sorry, my father is lying in bed at the moment, so he couldn't personally come and thank you." Li Hongxiu bowed and said. "It's nothing." Yishiwen nodded. He was helping Skyfire Chamber of Commerce because it was an exchange of benefits, so he didn't care about these things at all. "Can we go now?" Yishiwen said. "As long as Mr. Wen is ready, we can go at any time," Li Hongxiu said. "Then let's go." Chapter 1439. The sky was dark and boundless. Demonic aura and spiritual aura converged to form a grayish-black color, looking rather dim. This was the scene in the land of chaos. Endless demonic aura and spiritual aura collided, forming a strange scene. The endless demonic aura and spiritual aura distorted the vision in the air, making it difficult for people to see even a little further. In the sky, a dozen figures swept over and flew directly into the sky. The person in the lead was dressed in a green robe and looked to be in his 20s. He had a somewhat delicate appearance, but there was also a bit of domineering air about him. Behind him was a beautiful woman, and beside her was a scrawny old man. And behind these 3 people, there was a group of more than a dozen experts half a step into the celestial realm. This was Yishiwen and the people from the Heavenly Fire Chamber of Commerce. Apart from him, Li Hongxiu, and Uncle Lin, there was also a group of elites from the Heavenly Fire Chamber of Commerce. It could even be said that the majority of the Heavenly Fire Chamber of Commerce's half-step celestial realm experts were gathered here. 2/3 of the remaining celestial realm experts were still in the Heavenly Fire Chamber of Commerce, and naturally, the bedridden president of the Heavenly Fire Chamber of Commerce. Although the Heavenly Fire Chamber of Commerce had made a name for itself and extinguished the demonic Flame Chamber of Commerce, they knew very well that it was all Yishiwen's doing. But Yishiwen could not stay with the Heavenly Fire Chamber of Commerce for the rest of his life. The Heavenly Fire Chamber of Commerce was basically the simplest combination of interests. This kind of combination was also the easiest to break. Therefore, to truly revitalize the Heavenly Fire Chamber of Commerce, they had to rely on their own people. Whoosh! There was a sudden violent airflow in the sky, followed by a violent cry of birds. In the sky, a huge dark cloud swept towards them at high speed. At a glance, it was about 200 to 300 meters in size. In the blink of an eye, it was already in front of everyone. At this time, everyone could clearly see that it was actually a huge ferocious bird. It seemed to cover the sky, and when it opened its mouth, a huge beam of chaotic light swept out. None of them were to be trifled with, and they immediately retreated on the spot. Boom! Wherever the beam of chaotic light passed, the entire mountain range was flattened and blasted into pieces. Its power was unimaginable. Beasts, don't you dare! At that moment, the old servant Uncle Lin made his move, forming a giant hand that slapped down on the huge ferocious bird. From the sky. Bang! The bird was struck on the spot and staggered down from the clouds. At this moment, the bird seemed to have finally realized that this group of people was not to be trifled with. It was only at this moment that he wanted to escape. As the overlord of this region, Heaven-tier vicious beasts could do whatever they wanted wherever they went. Who would have thought that he would encounter such a group of fiendish fiends? Seeing that Yishiwen was eager to give it a try, Uncle Lin stepped forward and said, "Mr. Wen, there is no need to use a butcher's knife to kill a chicken. Let this old slave handle this beast." After saying that, Uncle Lin took a step forward. His aura instantly changed and a sharp aura swept out. He no longer looked humble. This was his true self. After being healed by Yishiwen's Phoenix regeneration technique, Uncle Lin's strength recovered very quickly. Soon, he was restored to the peak of first sky of Heaven tier. Right now, he was only second to the bedridden president of Skyfire Chamber of Commerce. This ferocious bird wanted to escape, but how could Uncle Lin let it escape? He directly blasted out a terrifying fist pressure, and the ferocious bird was blasted away on the spot. Then, Uncle Lin chased after it and punched it to death. The huge corpse was also collected into Uncle Lin's spatial ring. The corpse of this kind of heaven-tier vicious bird was definitely worth a lot. This was just an interlude on their way. In this chaos, there were also many ferocious beasts. Some of these ferocious beasts were in groups, while some were alone. Ferocious beasts at the heaven tier like these often appeared and lived alone. After killing this ferocious bird, the group did not stop and continued to move forward. "Until now, Miss Lee still doesn't want to tell us where we are going," Yishiwen said unhurriedly. "It's not that we want to hide it from Mr. Wen, it's just that there are too many people here. We were afraid that the news would leak out, so we didn't tell you. For my father, that thing is too important. Now that we have entered the bedlam, we can naturally tell Mr. Wen," Li Hongxiu said. "My father was seriously injured by Shui the ancestor. He was also seriously injured by the unique blood poison of the vampire race," Li Hongxiu said. "So you came here to find something that can cure the president's injury. May I ask what it is?" Yishiwen asked. "I won't hide it from Mr. Wen, it's a phoenix skeleton," Li Hongxiu said. "What?" Yishiwen said in surprise. He couldn't help but be surprised. If the skeleton of a phoenix was real, then it could be said to be priceless. It was simply a priceless treasure. Just like the dragon race, the phoenix race was also a legendary race. It was different from the dragon race, which was a subspecies of dragon race. Although there were many subspecies of the phoenix race, the number of subspecies of the phoenix race was far from that of the dragon race. Even those subspecies were innately tyrannical creatures. They could even reach the pinnacle of the celestial realm if they cultivated to a certain extent. So, usually, pure-blooded phoenix and pure-blooded dragon race were relatively rare. Especially after the phoenix race and the dragon race had withdrawn from the dominance of the ancient Barrens continent, they were basically very rare. Even the corpses or bones of the subspecies of their respective races were priceless in the outside world, let alone the bones of a pure-blooded phoenix. If people knew about it, perhaps it would really cause a commotion in Chaos City, or even the entire demon realm, to participate in the opening of the bedlam this time. "Is it pure-blooded?" Yishiwen asked. This was the most important thing. It should be pure-blooded. There's no doubt about it. Even if it's not pure-blooded, even if it's just a subspecies, it will still be greatly beneficial to my father's injury, said Li Hongxiu. Yi Shiwen finally understood what she was thinking. The phoenix race was famous for being difficult to die. Even if it turned into ashes, it could still be reborn and be reborn. Even among mortals, there was a saying that tiger bones were used to make wine to treat injuries, let alone the skeleton of a phoenix. Yi Shiwen, who practiced the phoenix regeneration technique, understood this even better. If the skeleton of a phoenix could be refined into an elixir, ordinary injuries wouldn't be a problem at all, even if it was the skeleton of a phoenix that had been dead for a long time. I see, said Yi Shiwen. This was discovered by the seniors of our Heavenly Fire Chamber of Commerce who entered the bedlam last time. Because my father was severely injured, I thought of obtaining the skeleton of a phoenix to refine into an elixir to treat my father's injury, said Li Hongxiu. Since you have already discovered it, why didn't you take it away last time? Yi Shiwen was a little puzzled. For the outside world, the skeleton of a phoenix was definitely a priceless treasure. If they had discovered it earlier, why didn't they take it away earlier? It's because of the location of this phoenix's skeleton. This phoenix's skeleton is located in a valley. There is a very fierce bird living in this valley. Although each of them only has the strength of the law manifestation realm, they are in groups. There are easily millions or even millions of them. Although our seniors who entered the bedlam last time found this phoenix's skeleton, they happened to return to their nest at that time, so there was no way to take the phoenix's skeleton away, said Li Hongxiu. Yi Shiwen was enlightened. So that was how it was. Although the strength of the law phase realm was nothing to him now, if there were millions or even millions of them attacking together, he would have no other choice but to flee. This number was really terrifying. If they really met, then they could only escape. So this time, we have to calculate the time when they leave and return to their nest, right? Said Yi Shiwen. And yes, we can only leave before they come if we accurately calculate the time when they leave and return to their nest. Otherwise, we will only have a dead end. Li Hongxiu nodded. Then let's hurry up. Yi Shiwen nodded and said, the phoenix's skeleton was definitely priceless. No wonder Li Hongxiu didn't dare to say it before. Once he changed his mind, they couldn't do anything. In fact, even if they came here, they couldn't do anything if he also changed his mind. This was the helplessness of being weaker than others. They could only place their hopes on others. The group quickly rushed to the mountain pass that Li Hongxiu mentioned. It took them a whole day to finally fly to the mountain pass that Li Hongxiu mentioned. In fact, no one among them had been here before. They could only find it by relying on the map left by the predecessor. However, when everyone arrived at the mountain pass, they discovered that it was exactly the time when those vicious birds left their nests to hunt for food. These vicious birds would often move in groups of millions or even millions. Therefore, every time they moved, they would need a huge amount of food. Therefore, it would take a long time for them to hunt for food. Generally, as long as the time was calculated, there shouldn't be any problems. Originally, everyone was going to wait until these ferocious birds returned to their nests, and then leave their nests, and then they would consider going in, so as to avoid being caught off guard. However, Yi Shiwen soon discovered that something was wrong. Some of the nearby ferocious beasts had been beheaded, not by those ferocious birds, but by people. In other words, it meant that someone came before them, and they were going to get there first. After getting this conclusion, Li Hongxiu suddenly became nervous. Chapter 1440. Thinking of this, Li Hongxiu immediately became nervous. For others, the phoenix bone was priceless, but for the Heavenly Fire Chamber of Commerce, it was a life-saving medicine. Thinking of this, Li Hongxiu immediately became anxious and said, judging from the traces, I'm afraid it hasn't been long. Someone might have gotten here before us. I'm afraid we can't wait that long. We must go to the valley as soon as possible. At this time, Li Hongxiu saluted Yi Shiwen and said in a serious manner, Mr. Wen, Thank you for your help at the most critical time of our heavenly fire chamber of commerce. You also escorted us all the way here. We don't need to trouble Mr. Wen anymore. Mr. Wen can go on his own." Yi Shiwen immediately understood what she meant. No one knew when the vicious birds in the valley flew out of their nest. It was because they couldn't judge, so it was the most dangerous. If they suddenly returned halfway, then it would be death for Li Hongxiu and the others. Therefore, they didn't bring Yi Shiwen along. Not to mention, if they entered the valley, they might encounter the masters who entered first. Then, they might have the fiercest battle. If Yi Shiwen was really their master, they naturally had to go. However, others might not know the relationship between them, but they did. At this time, they naturally didn't dare to ask Yi Shiwen to go with them. "Forget it. Since I've accepted your amethyst glazed fruit, I will naturally take responsibility until the end," Yi Shiwen said. "Thank you, Mr. Wen." Li Hongxiu was immediately overjoyed. She naturally knew how important Yi Shiwen's combat power was for their success. "If that's the case, then let's go quickly." Yi Shiwen was already prepared for a battle. The amethyst glazed fruit was priceless. Since he had already accepted it, he naturally had to do it until the end. "Mr. Wen, we may not encounter them because there are many winding paths in this valley. The phoenix bone is in one of them, so we may not encounter them," Li Hongxiu said. "If that's the case, then let's go." The interior of the valley was a massive space. Furthermore, it was sealed by some unknown power, making it impossible to fly beyond a height of 1,000 zhang. It was as if there was a massive barrier sealing this place. That was why it was said that the return of those ferocious birds was the most terrifying heavenly tribulation. It was simply impossible to escape. At first glance, the interior of the entire valley was like a paradise. Yi Shiwen looked around and saw some heavenly treasures growing on the cliffs. All of them were relatively precious medicinal herbs. Since they grew in this valley, neither humans nor ominous beasts dared to patronize them. Anyone would have been buried in the bellies of those ominous birds if they were to face millions of ominous birds. Yi Shiwen looked around and saw that the interior of the valley was like a paradise. However, there were quite a number of fierce beasts that sneaked in while these fierce birds were away. Along the way, everyone saw many corpses of these fierce beasts. All of them had been killed. They could see such corpses along the way. All of them were recently killed. Yi Shiwen frowned. Judging from the way they killed these ominous beasts, the strength of this group of people was no small matter. Among them, there were many ominous beasts of celestial realm level. However, all of them were killed in one move without exception. They flew all the way into the valley. Soon, everyone had flown into a large grassland. The most amazing thing was that the grass growing on this grassland was actually phoenix blood grass. Just like dragon blood grass, phoenix blood grass was also a rare treasure because it could only grow with the blood of a phoenix. Although the quality of the phoenix blood grass in front of them was not very good, and it wasn't watered with pure phoenix blood, but even so, it was still a rare treasure. Just the phoenix blood grass in this grassland added up to tens of billions of spirit crystals. "Hiss, I didn't expect that there would be so many phoenix blood grass here," Li Hongxiu said. "Phoenix blood grass doesn't have a specific growing environment. The only requirement is that it must be watered with phoenix blood. Such a large grassland, how much phoenix blood would it take to irrigate it?" Everyone also had a puzzled look on their faces. Everyone was very clear about the nature of phoenix blood grass. Could it be that a phoenix had been injured here and had grown it? Thinking of that phoenix skeleton, everyone felt that there was such a possibility. However, it was quickly overturned because phoenix blood grass wasn't so pure. If it was watered with the blood of a real phoenix, then it wouldn't be as simple as tens of billions of spirit crystals. Such a huge scale would at least be worth trillions of spirit crystals. The people of the phoenix race might not care about phoenix blood, but for the people who weren't from the phoenix race, it was a holy healing medicine. Yi Shiwen understood this the best because he had cultivated the phoenix regeneration technique. It was said that even in the phoenix race, it was a supreme secret technique. His body had been faintly transformed into a physique similar to that of the phoenix. In addition, he had swallowed so many heavenly treasures. Now, it wouldn't be wrong to say that Yishiwen was a medicine with a heaven-defying effect. Then, the only possibility is that the descendants of the phoenix stayed here and watered these phoenix blood grass, Yishiwen said. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. He suddenly thought of a possibility. Could it be that these ominous birds are actually the descendants of the phoenix? And this is their habitat. Who else could have watered such a huge amount of phoenix blood grass and didn't care about it? Yishiwen's statement immediately got everyone's approval. However, because of this, everyone couldn't help but feel a little scared. These ominous birds were already terrifying enough. If they were the descendants of the phoenix, then perhaps they would be really unparalleled and unstoppable. However, since things had already come to this point, everyone didn't think much about it. They immediately accepted these phoenix blood grass. Li Hongxiu and the others didn't want them either. They directly gave all of them to Yishiwen. After all, Yishiwen had risked his life to come here for them. This friendship was priceless. Yishiwen didn't decline and directly accepted all of them. For Yishiwen, who had the phoenix regeneration technique, he didn't care about the phoenix blood grass. However, selling the phoenix blood grass would give him a fortune of tens of billions of spirit crystals. This was what he needed the most at present. He wanted his cultivation to skyrocket in a short period of time. All kinds of spirit crystals were indispensable. For others, these tens of billions of spirit crystals were enough. However, for him, it was still far from enough. Especially when he wanted to step into the celestial being realm. He still didn't have any confidence in dealing with the heaven's retribution of the celestial being realm. He could single-handedly block the heaven's retribution of the ordinary celestial being realm. However, he didn't have any confidence in dealing with the heaven's retribution of the celestial being realm. After collecting these phoenix blood grasses, Yishiwen and the others did not stop and continued to move forward. Soon after, they arrived at a boundless lake. These lakes were glittering with golden rays of light. These lake waters were also treasures. If these lake waters were to be placed outside, then perhaps they could be sold for a high price. However, at this time, everyone didn't have the mood to continue to stay. They directly flew over the lake. Crash! There was a loud sound of water splashing. They saw a huge figure sweeping across the sky. It directly pounced towards Yishiwen and the others. Yishiwen's reaction was the fastest. He directly shot his palm towards the head of this huge figure. Bang! The creature was blasted away. Boom! This creature directly fell into the lake water. It set off endless water splashes. Everyone could clearly see that this creature was actually a crocodile whose whole body was glittering with golden light. Moreover, what was even more terrifying was that Yishiwen discovered that there were many such figures hidden in the nearby golden water surface. They didn't pay attention to it earlier. They were dazzled by the glittering golden light. However, now that they had been sneak attacked, they suddenly looked carefully. There were actually many such golden crocodile-like ominous beasts hidden under the lake's surface. They were densely packed together. They suddenly felt a chill down their spines. Adamantine water. This lake water turns out to be adamantine water. I don't know why the adamantine has turned into lake water. Yishiwen, who was splashed by the lake water, immediately discovered the problem with the lake water. The golden lake water turned out to be a liquid made of adamantine. Generally, adamantine existed in a solid state. However, now it actually existed in a liquid form. This in itself was incredible. Most importantly, this lake itself was priceless. Adamantine was an indispensable raw material for refining various martial instruments. Now, it had actually formed a boundless lake. One could imagine that it was absolutely priceless. Because adamantine itself was a metal that had been refined to the extreme form, it couldn't be any purer. It was already unclear how many spirit crystals this lake of adamantine water could be sold for. However, this idea couldn't be taken. The golden crocodiles in the lake were a terrifying existence. At a glance, it was unknown whether there were hundreds or thousands of them. Most importantly, their physical bodies were terrifyingly strong. Yishiwen's palm just now only made this crocodile feel a little uncomfortable. It then lurked back into the water. It should be known that with the strength of his palm, even if he didn't use his full strength, it would be easy to easily kill a half-step celestial realm. Even if these crocodiles weren't in the celestial realm, their physical bodies alone were already terrifying enough. No wonder they could survive under the noses of those ominous birds. This was also an extremely large group. Most likely, their daily source of food was those ominous birds. "Everyone be careful!" Yishiwen reminded. As soon as his voice fell, huge figures leaped out of the water, opened their bloody mouths one after another, and bit towards Yishiwen and the others. With that terrifying bite force, perhaps even gold and iron would be bitten off on the spot. Yishiwen and the others hurriedly used all their skills to avoid these ominous beasts that pounced over. Chapter 1441. These golden crocodiles were hiding in the water like fish in the water. There was no fluctuation at all, and they would suddenly jump up. It was terrifying. However, the high altitude of this valley was blocked, and they could not fly high. They could only fly at a low altitude. These crocodiles could jump thousands of feet, and each of them was very terrifying. Bang! 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 The crocodiles were blown away by Yishiwen on the spot. However, because there were too many of them, Yishiwen had no time to attack with all his strength. He could only blow them away. Even so, there were too many of these behemoths. When going over, one had to be fully focused and careful. A warrior half a step into the celestial realm had been swallowed by a golden crocodile in a moment of carelessness, and there was no time to rescue him. Although the scope of this golden lake was very wide, they finally reached the end. It took everyone a full 4 hours to finally escape from the golden lake. Most of them were the warriors of half-step celestial realm. Otherwise, Yishiwen, Li Hongxiu, and the old servant, Uncle Lin, could still pass through relatively easily. However, even so, several warriors of half-step celestial realm were injured. After a short rest, when their injuries were almost healed, they began to rush toward the valley again. After crossing the golden lake, as Li Hongxiu said, there were many forks. At a glance, there were more than a dozen forks, and each of them had many forks. It was so densely packed that it was impossible to count them clearly. Even if it was a warrior, he could not distinguish them at all. Fortunately, Li Hongxiu had the notes left by the senior, so she quickly determined which way to go. After entering the forks, there was basically no danger. They encountered a lot of natural treasures along the way, but they were all taken away by Yishiwen and others. Suddenly, Yishiwen and the others felt an incomparably powerful coercion in front of them, and it shrouded the entire region. The Phoenix regeneration technique in Yishiwen's body faintly responded. It was the pressure of the Phoenix. "Yes, it's here!" A smile appeared on Li Hongxiu's small face. "According to the senior's letter, it is here. There is a powerful pressure that belongs to the Phoenix." The old servant, Uncle Lin, also had an emotional smile on his face. "As expected of the Phoenix. Even though it's been dead for so many years, it still exudes a boundless pressure that suppresses all directions. I really can't imagine how terrifying it would have been when it was alive." Many martial artists nodded in agreement. After entering the Phoenix skeleton's oppressive aura, everyone's pace became much slower. Every step forward required a great deal of strength. They were completely suppressed by the oppressive aura. And this was only the oppressive aura of the Phoenix skeleton. If it were a living Phoenix, it would be very difficult for them to even approach it. This Phoenix was probably an incomparably terrifying existence before it died. Be it the Phoenixes or the dragons, they were all a race that was blessed by the heavens. Every single one of them was extremely terrifying when they were born, and there were even noble races that were born with the strength of the heaven tier. Thus, even if they did not cultivate much, their cultivation could still reach an extremely high level. However, if he were to cultivate seriously, he would definitely become one of the top experts in the world. "No, it's too slow. Let me do it!" Yishuan immediately took a step forward, and his body exuded endless golden divinities, which directly offset the oppressive aura emitted by the phoenix skeleton. Everyone finally breathed a sigh of relief. This kind of oppressive aura was really too terrifying. Just approaching it was already incomparably terrifying. Everyone looked at Yishuan with a somewhat strange gaze. Could it be that he really had a special bloodline like the legends said? Otherwise, how could he ignore the oppressive aura of the phoenix? However, they saw that Yishuan didn't intend to explain anything. So, they didn't ask any more questions. They immediately followed Yishuan and continued to move forward. Soon, everyone finally saw the skeleton of the phoenix which had stopped them from moving forward. They couldn't help but suck in a mouthful of cold air. This phoenix skeleton was hundreds of meters long. It was very huge, and its whole body was exuding a kind of fiery red flame as if it was going to burn through the entire sky. That's great. Dad can be saved! Li Hongxiu's face could not help but reveal a somewhat surprised smile. With the phoenix skeleton as medicine, any illness could be cured. Ha 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 ha, I didn't expect that we would be so lucky to actually find a phoenix skeleton. At this time, everyone heard a burst of savage laughter coming from behind. Everyone was suddenly shocked. They turned around and saw a tall great demon. At this time, he was flapping the huge fleshy wings behind him, and his eyes were full of greed as he looked at the phoenix skeleton. When Li Hongxiu saw this great demon, her face suddenly turned pale. It turns out to be the owner of the Demonic Saber Club. Nice to meet you, nice to meet you. At this time, Li Hongxiu forced herself to calm down and said, TSK, it turns out to be you, Li Hongxiu. I heard that you are very good at making trouble during this time. I didn't expect you to be so lucky to actually find a phoenix skeleton here. Ha ha ha, God is really helping me. When the time comes, I will integrate the phoenix skeleton into my body and practice the immortal phoenix demon body. My cultivation will also be able to break through to the 4th level of the heaven realm. At that time, it will be a piece of cake to rule Chaos City. The owner of the Demonic Saber Club laughed loudly, and his eyes were full of greed. Owner, we only want one of the phoenix bones. You can take the rest. We absolutely have no objection. How about it? Said Li Hongxiu. Although the phoenix skeleton was priceless, it was not as important as her life. Moreover, only one phoenix bone was needed to treat her father. So, she almost made up her mind to give up fighting for it without much effort. No! The owner of the Demonic Saber Club immediately turned hostile and said, All the phoenix bones are mine. I can't give any to you. Do you think you can still leave? This phoenix skeleton is priceless. How can I let you go and spread the news? This phoenix skeleton was not just priceless. If the news spread, even a master like Yizhen Mo would be involved in the fight. The owner of the Demonic Saber Club naturally wouldn't let Li Hongxiu and the others have the opportunity to spread the news. Owner of the Demonic Saber Club, we can swear to God that we will never tell anyone about today's matter. We can make an oath, said Li Hongxiu quickly. These people had already practiced to the unity of heaven and man. They could sense the existence of God. Naturally, they wouldn't speak carelessly. If they made an oath, then they must abide by it. Otherwise, they might suffer the wrath of God. Yishuan had made a vow before. If Yemo hadn't changed his appearance, then he would have been the god's envoy. Yishuan was afraid that he would have been an honest god at this time. Li Hongxiu was also unusually sullen at this time. However, there was no other way. As the saying goes, how could one not lower his head when under someone else's roof? At this time, Yishuan finally reacted. What kind of person was this owner of the Demonic Saber Club? In Chaos City, there were 10 major forces besides the Heavenly Fire Chamber of Commerce. It was said that the Demonic Saber Club was established a long time ago. It was passed down from generation to generation. Every generation's owner of the Demonic Saber Club was a top master. Every generation, there were masters of the 3rd heavens of the celestial realm. Sometimes, there would even be masters of the 4th heavens of the celestial realm. At this time, Yishuan's heart couldn't help but tighten. If it was this owner of the demonic saber club, then things would be troublesome. The owner of the demonic saber club had an exceedingly high cultivation. He was at the third heavens of the celestial realm. Even Yishuan wouldn't be a match for him for the time being. Make an oath? Do you think I will believe it? And do I need to? As long as I kill all of you, then nothing will spread. I will enjoy the phoenix skeleton alone. No one can stop me. The owner of the demonic saber club sneered indifferently. It seemed as if he was laughing at Li Hongxiu's naivety and overconfidence. Li Hongxiu also knew that this request wouldn't be easy to agree to. If he could kill them to silence them, then why bother to let them go? These devils were cruel by nature. They didn't believe in oaths. They only believed in dead people. Owner of the demonic saber club, do you really want to shed all pretense of cordiality with us? Our heavenly fire chamber of commerce and your demonic saber club won't be able to coexist harmoniously as long as one of us escapes. The old servant Uncle Lin stepped forward and said, Ha, then let's see if you can escape from my hands. The owner of the demonic saber club sneered and said, Moreover, even if you can escape, the 10 major forces don't have a top master to oversee them. An ordinary man's wealth will arouse the envy of others. This is a road to disaster. I didn't care about you before. But now you dare to threaten me? You're courting death. At this time, the old servant Uncle Lin took a deep breath and stepped forward and said, Young lady, take the phoenix skeleton and escape immediately. This old servant will help you stall the owner of the demonic saber club. At this time, the old servant Uncle Lin was like a brave warrior who cut off his wrists. Facing a master at the third level of the sky realm, there seemed to be no other way but to stall for time. If this wasn't Shuedezu, who was at the second level of the sky realm, they would still have the courage and ability to fight. Facing the owner of the demonic saber club, even if they tried their best, they could only stall for time. It was impossible to defeat the owner of the demonic saber club. No, how can this be? Li Hongxiu said immediately. The old servant Uncle Lin took a deep breath and said, Young lady, the death of this old servant is not to be regretted. As long as the young lady survives, the heavenly fire chamber of commerce will certainly rise again one day. The only thing this old servant can do is to stall for time for the young lady. Ha ha ha, what a ridiculous feeling. You stinky fishes and shrimps want to stop me? It can only be a joke. The owner of the demonic saber club laughed. Chapter 1442. Ha ha ha, what a ridiculous feeling. Do you think you can stop me with just a few smelly fish and shrimps? It can only be ridiculous. Owner Zhang Kuang laughed loudly. He had reason to be proud. An expert at the third heaven of the celestial realm, even in Chaos City, was also a top-notch expert. A mere group of first heaven of the celestial realm and half-step celestial realm rotten fish and shrimps. What qualifications did they have to be compared to him? No, I can't let you stay, Li Hongxiu said immediately. But at this time, the old servant Linbo looked at Yishuan and said, Mr. Wen, I will entrust the eldest miss to you. Let me make a rare decision in this matter. This is a set of phoenix skeleton. Our president only needs a small piece of it. Mr. Wen can take the rest as a reward for protecting our eldest Mississippi. Yishuan was stunned for a moment. Uncle Lin, Li Hongxiu said at this time. Let's go. Yishuan grabbed Li Hongxiu's wrist with one hand. In the face of a master of the third sky of celestial realm, even he had no confidence. At the same time, his other hand suddenly drew a big hand, and the constantly burning phoenix skeleton was taken into the Tianyuan mirror. Want to leave? Boy, I will let you know that it is not easy to take my things. Owner Zhang Kuang roared. His body was like a terrifying lightning, and he instantly rushed in front of Yishuan. His speed was extremely fast. Owner Zhang Kuang, your opponent now is me! The old servant Uncle Lin roared. He instantly rushed up and clenched his fist. Boom! An incomparably terrifying power condensed on his fist, and he suddenly punched down. Boom! A mushroom cloud suddenly rose from the ground, and countless smoke and dust instantly swept up into the sky in the shape of a column. Is that all? Owner Zhang Kuang's figure appeared. The terrifying mushroom cloud just now didn't hurt him at all. He only used one hand to block such an attack. Almost at the same time, a long blade appeared in Owner Zhang Kuang's hand. Endless demon energy entangled on it, and the law appeared in it. Gaga gaga, go to hell! He laughed insolently. The long blade suddenly burst out with endless blade light, and chopped down towards Yishiwen. Whoosh! The long blade instantly cut through a burst of golden light, and Yishiwen's figure disappeared, leaving only a burst of golden light. When Yishiwen reappeared, he was already 100 meters away, and Li Hongxiu was also pulled to the side by him. Go quickly! Yishiwen roared. Do you want Uncle Lin to die in vain? Whoosh! A pair of golden wings appeared on his back, flapping continuously. You want to stop me, you old thing? The Devil Blade Master was extremely angry at this time. Yishiwen had escaped. This was a great humiliation for him. He stretched out his hand and turned it into a demonic hand that covered the sky, grabbing at Uncle Lin. Get into formation and escort the young miss away! Uncle Lin shouted. At that very moment, the many half-step sky human stage experts from Skyfire Commerce set up a great array, seemingly unafraid of death. Their actions caused the surrounding space to shake violently as the great array pressed down on Sect Master Demonic Blade. Boom! The great array and the demonic hand collided fiercely on the spot, and countless terrifying forces swept out instantly. A terrifying mushroom cloud rose, and boundless airwaves swept out instantly. You want to stop me with this broken array? The Devil Blade Master sneered, and his big hand suddenly slammed down. Bang! The entire great array collapsed on the spot, and those half-step sky human stage experts were directly blown away. The difference in strength between the two sides was too great, and they could not even withstand a single move from him. Immediately after, the Devil Blade Master sneered, and the demonic hand directly grabbed out. Those half-step sky human stage experts were directly grabbed by this demonic hand and burst into a cloud of blood mist. After letting out a scream, they died tragically on the spot. Flutter, flutter, flutter! A loud noise came from outside, and then the entire sky seemed to be covered all of a sudden. In an instant, there was no other sound in the entire sky, only this terrifying sound. Everyone's expression suddenly changed. Those ferocious birds had returned. Thinking of this, everyone's expression suddenly changed. Each of those ferocious birds was extremely terrifying. There were millions of them, just like the clouds in the sky, endless. Miss, leave quickly, I will hold this Devil Blade Master. Uncle Lin looked at the Devil Blade Master. Let's die here together! Go! At this time, Yishiwen directly grabbed Li Hongxiu's hand, and did not fly out, because he knew that it was a dead end. Instead, he flew directly into the valley. Break for me! He shouted, clenched his 5 fingers into a fist, and directly blasted into the cliff. This cliff was made of unknown materials, and Yishiwen's full strength was not enough to shatter it. He could only blast a big hole on the spot. But even so, it is enough! Yishiwen directly pulled Li Hongxiu and rushed into the flashing light. Get lost, I don't want to die with you, old man! At this time, the Devil Blade Master let out a terrifying roar, and a terrifying saber light directly swept out from his hand. Bang! Uncle Lin was blasted away on the spot, and the bear was completely cracked. Just when the Devil Blade Master was about to attack Yishiwen, Uncle Lin once again rushed towards them. Your opponent is me. I have said that today, you and I will die here together. Uncle Lin smiled miserably. Get lost! At this time, the Devil Blade Master let out a loud roar, and directly blasted a punch towards Uncle Lin. Bang! Uncle Lin's entire chest completely caved in, and a fist directly pierced through his chest. Uncle Lin! Seeing Uncle Lin's miserable state, Li Hongxiu's eyes were filled with tears. Puff! Uncle Lin spat out a mouthful of blood, and his hands were still firmly grasping the Devil Blade Master's arm, unwilling to let go. "Let's die together! Old man, who wants to die with you?" The Devil Blade Master roared, and the sound of the ferocious birds behind him was getting closer and closer, almost flying over. He suddenly opened his bloody mouth, and directly bit off Uncle Lin's head on the spot. Crunch, crunch! Uncle Lin's head was chewed to pieces on the spot. At the same time, countless ferocious birds seemed to have smelled the blood, and rushed over. Each of the ferocious birds was the size of a human. In the void, they were like sharp arrows, covering the entire sky in an instant. "Get out of here! Get out of here! I won't die here!" Dojo Master Magic Blade roared. The magic blade in his hand emitted astonishing fluctuations. Swoosh! A shocking saber radiance instantly swept out. Bang! 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 Hundreds of fiery red ferocious birds were directly vaporized into a bloody mist on the spot. However, the bloody mist was immediately devoured by their companions. Then, almost in an instant, the entire sky was covered with an almost endless amount of bloody mist. Perhaps their individual strength was not the strongest, but their endless numbers completely made up for the lack of strength. The strength of this dojo master demonic saber was indeed tyrannical. Although he was surrounded, the demonic saber in his hand directly swept out endless waves, annihilating any ferocious birds that got close to him into clouds of blood mist. However, the number of these ferocious birds was too large, and it didn't take long before he was completely submerged in the area of the ferocious birds' activities. However, Yishiwen and Li Hongxiu had no time to care about the Devil Blade Master, who had already been submerged in the ferocious birds. Because there were also countless ferocious birds directly rushing over in front of their cave. They flapped their huge wings, and instantly rushed in front of Yishiwen. At this time, Yishiwen didn't have time to care about the Devil Blade Master. Even he couldn't protect himself under the attack of these ferocious birds. Puff! Countless ferocious birds directly rushed into the flashing, and spat out endless flames, almost melting the entire cave. Whoosh! Yishiwen's hand slashed out a sword aura, and directly annihilated these flames. A few of the fastest flying ferocious birds were bombarded into a bloody mist in an instant. Although Yishiwen's strength was not comparable to the Devil Blade Master, there was no difference at all for him. Now, there was only one belief left in his heart, and that was to hold on. He could only hold on. He knew that it would be very difficult to hold on until these ferocious birds came to look for food again. However, there was no other way now. There were hundreds and thousands of times more ferocious birds outside than in the cave. If he rushed out now, he would undoubtedly die. He could only hold on. At this time, Li Hongxiu also understood what kind of terrifying crisis she was facing. At this time, she also attacked with all her strength, and cooperated with Yishiwen. The sword aura in Yishiwen's hand seemed to be endless. It protected his whole body, and firmly blocked in front of Li Hongxiu. The sword aura tore the vast sky, and many ferocious birds were beheaded by Yishiwen every minute and every second. However, there were more ferocious birds directly rushing in from the cave entrance. These ferocious birds didn't care about the corpses of their companions at all. They directly opened their mouths, and directly burned the corpses into ashes. Then, they rushed in from the cave entrance. Puff! A ferocious bird directly rushed over, opened its beak, and bit Yishiwen's body. Bang! Yishiwen's sword aura immediately slashed down, and the ferocious bird was beheaded into a bloody mist. However, more and more ferocious birds took advantage of this gap to rush in. Both of them were almost surrounded by the ferocious birds. Fortunately, there was a wall behind them, and they were not completely surrounded. Even so, they were still in a precarious situation. Chapter 1443. There was no end to the ferocious birds. However, there was a limit to the amount of energy a human could muster. Even sky-human stage experts were no exception. Holding on until the ferocious birds left to hunt for food was simply unimaginable. Or his hands. This was something that was simply impossible to achieve. At this time, Yishuwen did not hide anything. He directly activated the domain of the power of wind and thunder. Countless power of wind and thunder turned into blades of wind and thunder. It swept into a terrifying storm of wind and thunder and annihilated a group of ferocious birds that rushed in. For a time, those ferocious birds could not get close to Yishuwen and Li Hongxiu at all. They were all blocked outside the domain of the power of wind and thunder. However, there seemed to be no end to these vicious birds. There was no end to them, and there was no end to them. On the other side, Li Hongxiu also activated her own domain. Under her domain, those ferocious birds were quickly beheaded on the spot. However, the frequency of this kind of battle was too frequent. Yishuwen quickly felt that the consumption of qi in his body was simply astonishing. Even his recovery speed could not keep up with this consumption speed. It could be imagined how astonishing this consumption speed was. On the other side, Li Hongxiu was even worse. After just a few hours, she had consumed all her qi. She was already exhausted. Such a battle not only consumed qi, but it also consumed her mental power. She had to maintain the most vigilant state almost all the time. The consumption of mental power could be imagined. Normally, this kind of consumption wouldn't be a big deal. But in battle, this kind of consumption was simply a death sentence. Yishuwen could hold on longer than her, but he was not much better. At most, he could only hold on for a few times longer. Li Hongxiu stopped to rest several times. Only then did she recover to her peak state. Then, the two tacitly switched to Li Hongxiu to take the front line. Although Li Hongxiu's strength was not as good as Yishuwen's, it was still a piece of cake for her to deal with these ferocious birds in the law manifestation realm. The only problem was that there were too many ferocious birds. They were simply endless, and it was impossible to kill them all. When Li Hongxiu could not hold on any longer, Yishuwen naturally took over and continued to kill these ferocious birds. However, it was impossible for Yishuwen to recover to the peak state every time. This caused the time that he could hold on to be constantly reduced. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed. For the two of them, who were madly killing the ferocious birds, time felt like centuries. The frequency of exchange between the two was also getting more and more frequent. Yishuwen was basically at his peak now, but he could only maintain less than 1/3 of his usual strength. At this rate, it was only a matter of time before they were exhausted to death by these beasts, and this was because they were hiding in the cave. If they were in an open area, they would have already been besieged to death. Facing these ferocious birds that were not afraid of death, they simply had no way to deal with them. Li Hongxiu was already battered and exhausted physically and mentally. Yishuwen was still fine. The enlightening mind ancient tree was forcibly suppressing his mind. So, even if he was a bit battered, his spirit was still forcibly maintained at the peak state. No one could stay at their peak state forever. This state consumed a lot of spirit. Normally, it was fine because the spirit consumption was not too great. Even if they maintained this state, they could still maintain balance. However, in this kind of intense battle, the consumption was so great that it was impossible to maintain this balance. The result of forcibly maintaining this state was a mental breakdown. But at this time, Yishuwen could not care so much. If he did not maintain this peak state, he was afraid that he would not be able to hold on until now. "Whatever, let's fight!" Yishuwen gritted his teeth and roared at this time. Even though he tried his best to save his real elemental energy, and was almost purely relying on the tyrannical strength of the tyrant body to continuously kill the fierce birds that rushed in, the sword light that filled the sky, and only relying on the tyrannical strength of his body to continuously kill those fierce birds that rushed in, but the consumption was still too great. If this went on, he was afraid that he would die on the spot before these ferocious birds left to look for food. Now, the only way was to have a breakthrough. As long as Yishuwen had a breakthrough to the late stage of half-step celestial being realm, then his strength would have a huge improvement. In this case, he should be able to safely hold on until these ferocious birds left. How could he not know how dangerous it was to have a breakthrough in the midst of a battle? Every time he did this, he was almost forced to do so. If he could have a peaceful breakthrough, he would not have chosen to do so. But now that things had come to this, there was no other way but to fight to the death. He directly took out the amethyst glazed fruit given to him by the people of the heavenly fire chamber of commerce and bit it. This amethyst glazed fruit immediately turned into a torrent of energy that rushed into Yishuan's limbs and bones. And Li Hongxiu, who was meditating and recovering behind him, simply widened her eyes. She could not believe that Yishuan actually chose to swallow the amethyst glazed fruit to have a breakthrough in this situation. Although everyone knew that in this situation, there was no other way but to swallow the amethyst glazed fruit to have a breakthrough. But knowing was one thing, being able to do it was another thing. Not everyone had such determination because many people had a breakthrough in the midst of a battle and died on the spot. Otherwise, the world would be full of people who had a breakthrough in the midst of a battle. But she did not know that this was not the first time Yishuan had done this. Although it was still very dangerous, it could be said that he was familiar with it. Boom! 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 The energy in Yishuan's body suddenly exploded. Every time, Yishuan's body would explode, and those vicious birds would be killed before they could even get close. Yishuan's face also showed a bit of a painful expression. The amethyst glazed fruit was forcibly raising his cultivation, and this process was extremely painful. But his cultivation was indeed rising bit by bit. It was a bit like pulling a seedling to help it grow, and at this time, he could not care so much. It did not take long for Yishuan's cultivation to be forcibly raised to the peak of half-step celestial realm middle stage. His cultivation had already climbed to the peak, but the huge amount of energy in his body had not been completely consumed. But his cultivation could not be raised for a while, so this energy was wreaking havoc in his body. Boom! 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 Waves of purple energy in his body swept out in a circle, and it was extremely terrifying. Now that things had come to this, Yishuan simply rushed directly into the crowd of these vicious birds, and let those vicious birds rush to his body, and then be bombarded by the purple energy. And more purple energy, in addition to wreaking havoc in his body, was constantly scouring the meridians in his body, and the realm of half-step celestial realm late stage. Yishuan felt as if countless needles were pricking his body. He broke out in cold sweat and his entire back was instantly drenched. Then, it was baked dry by the Jinyuan. Then, it was wet again, baked dry again, and this process kept repeating. His face had become extremely pale. His will could be said to be firm, but in this kind of situation, he was almost numb and unconscious. Because it was too painful, a normal person would have their nerve senses cut off at this time. But Yishuan had the Mingxin ancient tree to forcibly calm his mind, so he could not faint at all, and he could also 100% clearly feel this intense pain, as if his body was going to be torn apart. His whole body felt like it was going to be torn apart. Ah! Finally, he could not help but roar, as if he could vent his pain through roaring. Whoosh! Boom! 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 The sword light in Yishuan's hand was constantly flashing, sometimes as heavy as Mount Tai, sometimes as light as a goose feather. In this kind of situation, it seemed a bit chaotic, but his whole person was a bit crazy, and his tyrant body seemed to be torn apart on the spot. Break for me! Break for me! He continued to roar, and the pain in his body could not be alleviated at all. His roar was also drowned in the cries of these vicious birds. It was completely conceivable that the cries of millions of vicious birds could cover all other sounds, and even distort the transmission of divine thoughts. Yishuan and Li Hongxiu could only communicate with their eyes, and could not rely on divine thoughts and sound transmission at all. No one knew how much time had passed, and time had no meaning at this time. The terrifying energy that was constantly bursting out of Yishuan's body finally stopped, and then a terrifying aura leaped out of his body. Boom! Yishuan was like a vicious beast that was shedding its skin, shedding the old shell, and then glowing with a new life. His aura had an earth-shaking change in an instant, and the originally stagnant aura was constantly rising at this time. Half-step late-stage celestial being realm. He finally stepped into the half-step late-stage celestial being realm. This was a whole new level, and his whole vision seemed to have been opened. However, he was pulled up to hasten his growth, and there were some sequelae. The aura on his body spread out, and even Li Hongxiu, who was behind him, could not resist the invasion of such a terrifying aura. It was not the same as the breakthrough before, and now it was a bit like pulling up to hasten his growth, so he could not control the aura on his body. However, after completing the breakthrough, his strength had also been greatly improved. Now, he directly rushed into the group of vicious birds, and constantly launched a massacre. After stepping into the half-step late-stage celestial being realm, Yishuan's strength had another earth-shaking change. If it was said that it was very difficult for him before, now he could do it with ease. Moreover, he was also using these countless ferocious birds to temper his somewhat unstable and ethereal aura. Puchi! 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 If it was said that Yishuan killed a large number of birds before, then now he was accurate to every one of them. However, his speed was simply extremely fast, and his speed did not decrease much. Chapter 1444. Although the efficiency of killing was almost the same, but the actual consumption of Jinyuan was like heaven and earth. Yishuan was able to save almost half of his Jinyuan without sweeping across a large area. In addition, after he entered the half-step celestial realm, the recovery speed of his qi was even faster. Therefore, he was able to completely stabilize his footing. Yishuan seemed to be numb as he constantly waved his sword to kill the ferocious birds that were charging at him. As time passed, his half-step celestial realm continued to consolidate. He was originally a little unfamiliar with the realm, but he was also getting familiar with it through the constant killing. At the same time, he was absorbing the remaining energy of the purple crystal glazed fruit bit by bit. Although it would take some time to completely absorb it, it was enough for Yishuan. A ray of sunlight shone in, which made Yishuan and Li Hongxiu a little confused. How could there be sunlight? They didn't know how long it had been since they last saw sunlight. Because the entire cave entrance had been occupied by those fiery red ferocious birds. In other words, these ferocious birds had left. Yishuan looked outside. Sure enough, those ferocious birds that had besieged them for more than a month had finally left. It seemed like it was time for them to look for food again. We are saved. Li Hongxiu was still in a daze at this moment. She didn't expect that they would be saved just like that. Yishuan finally heaved a sigh of relief. Although he was confident that he could continue to hold on, he couldn't continue like this. But Uncle Lin, Li Hongxiu couldn't help but tear up when she thought of Uncle Lin who died tragically. In fact, she wasn't a sentimental person, nor was she a woman who only knew how to cry. However, Uncle Lin had watched her grow up. Later on, she died while covering his escape. In the end, even her head was swallowed by the Magic Blade Tavern. As for her body, it was probably completely buried in the stomachs of those ferocious birds. Thinking of this, she felt sorrow in her heart. In addition to Uncle Lin, many experts from the Heavenly Fire Chamber of Commerce were also buried. This trip to the land of chaos could be said to be a heavy loss for them. I'm bound to have good fortune after surviving a disaster. Ha ha ha, even such a disaster couldn't kill me. Ha ha. At this moment, a sharp laughter was heard. Dojo Master Demonic Blade. Yishuan and Li Hongxiu immediately reacted. There was no one else besides the Devil Blade Tavern Master who had appeared here at this time. However, they didn't expect that the Devil Blade Tavern Master wasn't dead. He didn't die under such circumstances. Both of them looked in that direction, and saw a devil's shadow in the valley. It was the Devil Blade School's master. However, the Devil Blade School's master was in a very difficult situation. In fact, he was in a much more difficult situation than the two of them. His pair of wings had been bitten to the point where only the skeleton was left. His right leg had also been bitten clean. There was also his left hand and chest. All that was left were bare bones. Being able to make a peak expert at the third heaven of the heaven realm so miserable, it could be imagined how savage those vicious birds were. Encountering such a large number of vicious birds, even if it was a heaven realm expert, they could only flee. Master Magical Saber, you are not dead yet! Li Hongxiu gritted her teeth and said. It was him who swallowed Uncle Lin's head alive. Li Hongxiu's eyes were filled with hatred. She hated Club Master Demonic Saber to the core. It's you too! You are not dead yet? At this time, the Devil Blade School's master, who had just escaped from the trap, finally noticed that Yi Shiwen and Li Hongxiu were still alive. They were not dead yet. Hee, it's really a case of wearing out iron shoes in vain. Like I said, one who survives a great disaster is bound to have good fortune later on. Ha ha! The Phoenix Skeleton is also mine. With the Phoenix Skeleton, I can definitely advance to the next level. Jia 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 jia. The Devil Blade School's master let out a sharp and unpleasant laughter. You have not been swallowed by those vicious birds. Then, let me send you on your way. Yi Shiwen's face was cold. The sword in his hand was swallowing and emitting sword light. Fighting seemed to have become his instinct. So that's how it is. No wonder you're so confident. It turns out that you've entered the realm of half-step celestial realm. If I'm not mistaken, your strength should have improved a lot. However, it's still not enough. In front of me, you're still not enough. The club master coldly glanced at Yi Shiwen and said. At this time, Yi Shiwen was like an unsheathed treasured sword. He was incomparably sharp. The aura on his body could not be concealed at all. Whether it is enough or not, you will know once you try, Yi Shiwen said with a cold smile. You are very bold. However, it is useless. You are nothing in front of my strength. The Devil Blade School's master sneered. His eyes were bursting with ominous light. His body began to emit endless light. The parts of his body that had been gnawed and left with only bones began to gradually grow flesh. He finally got rid of his zombie-like appearance. Die! At this time, a terrifying aura swept out from the Devil Blade School's master's hand. A blade light broke through the vast sky. It was extremely fast, and instantly chopped down in front of Yi Shiwen. Hey! You have not made much progress compared to a month ago, Yi Shiwen said with a slightly sarcastic tone. He sneered, and the sword in his hand moved instantly. The sword light tore through the vast sky, and bombarded the Devil Blade School's master. Bang! Another terrifying collision sound was heard. The sword light in Yi Shiwen's hand smashed the Devil Blade School's blade light into powder on the spot. The sword light's momentum didn't diminish. It directly bombarded the Devil Blade School's blade light. How can this be? The Devil Blade School's master was shocked. He hadn't expected that the might of Yi Shiwen's sword light would be so terrifying. He was even more shocked that Yi Shiwen had been an ant-like nobody who could only run away from him a month ago. However, Yi Shiwen had become so terrifying after only 1 month. He promptly dodged. However, it was too late. Yi Shiwen's sword light was like a poisonous tongue. His speed was even faster. It streaked across his shoulder in an instant. One of his arms flew out on the spot, and fell to the ground. Demon blood flowed out, and dripped onto the ground. The entire ground was polluted. Ah! The Devil Blade School's master screamed. He clutched his shoulder. His face was full of cold sweat. He looked at Yi Shiwen in horror. He couldn't believe that Yi Shiwen's speed had reached such a level. In fact, Yi Shiwen could even injure him. No, he couldn't injure him. He could be killed if he wasn't careful. Go and atone for your sins to the people you killed, Yi Shiwen coldly said. He took one step at a time, and the entire sky trembled. Mr. Wen, kill him! Kill him! Kill him! Kill him to avenge Uncle Lin! Li Hongxiu couldn't help but shout. She hated the Devil Blade School's master. However, she couldn't do anything. She couldn't do anything in the face of such a top powerhouse. Therefore, she could only rely on Yi Shiwen. You want to kill me? It won't be that easy! The Devil Blade School's master roared. Another arm grew out of his severed arm. It seemed as if he had been reborn. The devil race had an unimaginable advantage over the human race. Ah 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 ah! The Devil Blade School's master roared unceasingly. The scales on his body cracked. Countless terrifying forces were boiling inside his body. His blue veins were protruding. A terrifying aura was rampaging inside his body. His height, which was originally the height of an average person, grew twice as tall in an instant. Mr. Wen, be careful. That's his great devil transformation. He has returned to his real body. Li Hongxiu reminded him at this time. Do you still want to remind him? It's useless. He has thoroughly infuriated me. Nobody can save him now. The Devil Blade School's master laughed in a strange manner. His aura had also increased by a notch after his transformation. It had become even more terrifying. It's useless. I can be regarded as the #1 expert in Chaos City after my transformation. Nobody can be my match. The Devil Blade School's master roared in a cruel manner. Is that so? The #1 expert in Chaos City is nothing more than this if you are only at this level, Yishuan said with an ice-cold expression. Boy, don't be too arrogant. The Devil Blade School's master will launch a backhand slash at this time. Boom! A terrifying saber light directly swept across the sky. The saber light constantly swallowed and tore the vast sky. It was like a giant dragon opening its big mouth to swallow Yishuan whole. Arrogant? I'm not as arrogant as you. Yishuan sneered and moved instantly. He stepped on the ground with an endless terrifying force. His figure rushed out like a cannonball. Boom! The sword light in his hand and the Devil Blade School's saber light fiercely collided. Rumble! The frightening explosive force swept outwards in circles, directly spreading out in all directions with the center point where the two of them were clashing as the center. Now I will show you the real gap between you and a Celestial Realm expert. The Devil Blade School's master's voice appeared behind Yishuan. The Devil Blade School's master slashed down on the spot. His appearance was almost without warning, tearing the void and appearing behind Yishuan. This was a trick of a master of the Celestial Realm. Even if a warrior who was only half a step into the Celestial Realm could blow up the sky, it was impossible for him to tear the void. These were two completely different concepts. Therefore, no matter how strong Yishuan was, even if he could kill a Celestial Realm expert, he could not tear the void because he could not integrate with the world. This was an essential difference. The Devil Blade School's master's speed was extremely fast, but Yishuan's speed was not slow either. He backhanded his sword and slashed down. Chapter 1445. Dang! A huge explosion sound was heard. The terrifying aftermath of the fight between the two sides instantly spread out. However, when Yishuan wanted to continue his counterattack, he saw that the Devil Blade Master had disappeared without a trace. He almost left an afterimage in the sky. In an instant, he had already rushed in front of Yishuan. His unparalleled speed brought along an incomparably terrifying aura, shaking the entire space. His blade cut through the void. Ha ha ha, die for me! The Devil Blade Master roared. The blade light made his ferocious expression look even more ferocious. Rippling Mountain Seal! Yishuan directly condensed the Rippling Mountain Seal. A huge mountain range was formed in the sky, and crushed down. Rumble! The mountain range instantly crushed down. The Devil Blade Master's speed was fast, but Yishuan's was not slow either. Bang! The Rippling Mountain Seal fiercely fell on the Devil Blade Master's back. His powerful demon body was blasted open. He staggered on the spot, and his body fell down. However, the Devil Blade in his hand did not stop. It directly blasted towards Yishuan. On the other side, Yishuan spread out his hands, and a golden wall was formed, which directly blocked the attack. Shwa! Yishuan's figure disappeared, and instantly appeared in front of the Devil Blade Master. The long sword in his hand danced. You want to kill me? Not so easy! At this time, the Devil Blade Master finally reacted. He tore the space again, and disappeared in front of Yishuan's eyes. Even Yishuan's rippling mountain seal could not stop him. Huff, huff, huff! Devil Blade Master was gasping for breath when he reappeared. He had been severely injured by Yishuan's rippling mountain seal. But the biggest reason was that he had been constantly tearing the void and shuttling back and forth in the void. It consumed a lot of energy. Even a celestial realm expert couldn't tear the space unscrupulously. Only a person who possessed spatial talent could do so. Kill! However, the Devil Blade Master roared again almost instantly. The demon energy on his body condensed into an energy pillar and soared straight into the sky. The terrifying cultivation of the third sky of celestial realm was fully manifested at this moment. The endless air was squeezed and exploded, forming a large vacuum zone. The Devil Blade Tavern Master once again arrived in front of Yishuan's forehead like a beam of demonic light. The corner of Yishuan's mouth raised. This Devil Blade Tavern Master was still as terrifying as before. However, his movements had undoubtedly slowed down a lot compared to a moment ago. He had been seriously injured by Yishuan a moment ago. Moreover, he had continuously torn the space. So, he had consumed a lot of energy. Not to mention, he had been fighting with the ferocious birds for an entire month. So, he was physically and mentally exhausted. Now that he was facing Yishuan at his peak, he was naturally not as free as before. But even so, his speed was still frighteningly fast. The strength of an expert of the third firmament of the celestial realm was definitely not to be underestimated. Fortunately, it was Yishuan. If it had been an ordinary person, he wouldn't have been able to react, and would have been killed by him. Whoosh! A pair of golden wings suddenly stretched out behind Yishuan. It was a pair of wings that blotted out the sky, just like a piece of golden cloud. What kind of magical power is this? How can it be so terrifying? The Devil Blade Tavern Master's eyes were filled with a look of horror. Such a terrifying pair of wings flapped. The golden divinities swept out like a tidal wave, blotting out the sky and covering the earth. As the pair of huge wings flapped, the wind and thunder roared, just like the omen of a storm. I'll beat you to death! Yishuan sneered. Crash! A huge lightning fell from the sky, and directly pushed back the Devil Blade Tavern Master who was rushing over. Crash! The devil wings behind Yishuan continued to flap. The sound of wind and thunder resounded. Thunder and lightning boiled in this sea of wind and thunder. They revolved around Yishuan's body, making him feel as if he was in a kingdom of thunder. He had already used all his trump cards. He didn't have the mood to continue to tangle with his opponent. The Devil Blade Tavern Master's complexion was gloomy, and his expression was solemn. He didn't expect Yishuan to be so tyrannical. As the battle continued to heat up, Yishuan gradually revealed many abilities that he hadn't revealed before. This was something he hadn't anticipated beforehand. In other words, he had never thought that Yishuan would be so difficult to deal with. A half-step celestial realm warrior could actually cause him so much trouble. This was something he hadn't expected. Initially, he didn't think much of it. Although Yishuan claimed to have killed Shui de Zhu, and he had killed Shui de Zhu very easily, it wasn't a big deal. The Devil Blade Tavern Master could also do the same. However, this didn't mean that Yishuan had the same fighting strength as the experts of the third heavens of celestial realm. Crash! 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 Yishuan crazily flapped the huge golden wings on his back. Wind and thunder swept out like a dragon. It seemed as if a thunderstorm was raining down from the sky. Endless thunderstorms fell down from the sky like raindrops, and smashed towards the Devil Blade Tavern Master. Yishuan stood motionless. However, the domain of the storm wings raised by the demon wings almost covered the entire valley. The dojo master had nowhere to hide unless he hid in the subspace. As long as he appeared, Yishuan would be able to sense him immediately. The dojo master was no match for Yishuan at all. Yishuan, who was flying in the sky, was like a god of thunder and lightning. For these demons, thunder and lightning were the most powerful force in the world. For them, there was a huge suppression and restraint. Boom! A wind and thunder bombarded the Devil Blade Dojo's body, and scorched it black. Although it couldn't seriously injure the Devil Blade Dojo, it was enough to slightly slow down his movements. It was only for a short moment, but it was enough for Yi Shiwen to recover quickly. Then, the power of wind and thunder swept down, smashing towards the Devil Blade Tavern Master on the spot. Boom! 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 The first wind and thunder bombarded the Devil Blade Dojo's body. More and more wind and thunder powers fell on his body. The Devil Blade Dojo's body was in a difficult situation. He was constantly dodging. So, it was impossible for him to launch a new attack. There were a lot of wind and thunder. The power wasn't very strong. However, there were a lot of them. They fell down like a heavy downpour. The Devil Blade Tavern Master was extremely fast. He was like a black lightning. However, the problem was that Yi Shiwen's devil wings were like two huge golden clouds. The range was too wide. He couldn't escape in a short time. Therefore, he was in a difficult situation. Although he wasn't injured too much, it made him very depressed. Ah! The Devil Blade Tavern Master continued to roar. The long blade in his hand instantly tore the vast sky. It once again shuttled through time and space. When he appeared again, he was already behind Yi Shiwen. Go to hell! He roared. The long blade in his hand was a heavenly grade divine tool. It could shatter the entire sky. Two beams of golden light suddenly shot out. Yi Shiwen finally opened his eyes. He finally moved. Shwa! Yi Shiwen instantly turned around, accompanied by a loud and sharp sound of breaking through the air. He stretched out his hands. Golden divinities covered his hands. He chased after the heavenly grade divine tool, the Devil Blade Tavern Master. Bang! Yi Shiwen's palm collided with the Devil Blade Tavern Master. And the sound of metal colliding was heard. A huge sound of collision swept out. Especially Li Hongxiu. Her heart almost stopped beating when she saw this scene. She couldn't believe that Mr. Wen's strength had reached such a level. He was able to withstand a heaven-step celestial tool. The strength of his body was too exaggerated. He couldn't break the heaven-step long blade, but his body was enough to resist a heaven-step celestial tool. His body was terrifying enough. How could anyone be a match for him with such a body? Even the Devil Blade Tavern Master had been bitten by those vicious birds in the past month. The two of them were fine to a large extent because of Yi Shiwen's powerful body. Those vicious birds didn't have good teeth to bite off his flesh even if he had been bitten. Han seal! Yi Shiwen firmly grasped the blade with his left hand. His right hand once again condensed the Han seal. It transformed into a huge mountain range, and smashed down. The entire sky was shattered by the force of the explosion. Boom! A huge explosion sound was heard. A huge crack appeared on the ground. Dust and sand swirled in the air. The Devil Blade Tavern Master was blasted down on the spot. The Devil Blade Tavern Master was suppressed on the spot. I'd like to see if you can tear the space again and escape, Yi Shiwen sneered. He slowly landed on that huge mountain range. You! The Devil Blade Tavern Master struggled with all his might. However, it was useless because he couldn't break free from Yi Shiwen's imprisonment. He had practiced this Han seal to the peak. Dojo Master Fiend Blade's power was suppressed and slowly retracted. His huge body also returned to the size of an ordinary person. His power was also completely retracted. Miss Li, you will personally kill this bastard! Yi Shiwen stood on the mountain range and said, Thank you, Mr. Wen! Li Hongxiu immediately knelt down with tears in her eyes. She had witnessed Uncle Lin die tragically in the hands of the Devil Blade Tavern Master. It would forever be an indelible pain in her heart. Li Hongxiu stepped forward with her saber in hand. Her eyes were filled with killing intention as she said, Devil Blade Tavern Master, you must have never thought that you would end up like this. Winner takes all. There's nothing more to say. The Devil Blade Tavern Master couldn't move. However, he wasn't willing to bow his head in front of Li Hongxiu. If that's the case, then go to hell, Li Hongxiu shouted in a delicate voice. Raise your hand and the saber falls. The Devil Blade Tavern Master's head was chopped off on the spot. It rolled down. His spirit was destroyed. Chapter 1446. Yi Shiwen heaved a sigh of relief after killing the Devil Blade Tavern Master. Thank you, Mr. One, for helping me take revenge, Li Hongxiu bowed and said. It's nothing. It's a matter of course to take someone's money and get rid of a disaster, Yi Shiwen said. Li Hongxiu sighed. How could she not understand Yi Shiwen's meaning? He didn't want to have a deep relationship with him. Come to think of it, such a figure was not something that their small temple could accommodate. Such a peerless figure was not something that they could accommodate at all. In fact, even Chaos City could not accommodate him. She had a faint guess about Yi Shiwen's identity at this time. Such an outstanding person could only appear in a colossus like the Yi family. His surname wasn't Yi. However, the Yi family also had many subsidiary clans. So, it wasn't difficult for such an amazing genius to appear among them. It was common knowledge that many of these clans had a marriage alliance with the Yi family. Therefore, the blood of the Yi family flowed in their bodies more or less. You can take this phoenix bone with you. Yi Shiwen took out a phoenix bone and handed it over to Li Hongxiu. Thank you, Mr. One. My father is bedridden. Uncle Lin and many other experts have fallen because of this matter. I'm leaving now. I don't know if Mr. One would like to come with me? Li Hongxiu asked. No, you can leave first. I still have something to do, Yi Shiwen said. The entire chaotic land had become even more chaotic while Yi Shiwen, Li Hongxiu, and the others had been trapped in the valley for a month. Many experts had entered the Discord City. So, they had inevitably started to fight for the heavenly treasures. Divine light is flickering in the chaotic mountain in the center of the chaotic land. Someone seems to have discovered the shadow of the legendary god in the chaotic mountain. Someone encountered a terrifying creature in the chaotic mountain. Only one person managed to escape from the entire team. Rumors began to spread throughout the chaotic land. And the target of these rumors was the chaotic mountain. Some people said that the chaotic mountain hid the treasures and secrets left behind by the devil god. Some people also said that an extraordinary creature was lying dormant in the chaotic mountain. There were all kinds of rumors, and it was hard to tell which was the truth. However, this didn't stop the experts of the fringe from moving closer to the mountain of chaos. Very quickly, there were rumors that the entire chaotic mountain range was filled with multicolored light and terrifying roars could be faintly heard. There were even rumors that a heaven-shaking battle had occurred in the chaotic mountain range. Hundreds and thousands of experts had gathered in the chaotic mountains. For a time, the entire chaotic mountains was filled with an austere aura. However, as the central region of the fringe, the mountain of chaos was no different from an ordinary mountain range. In fact, it was even more withered than an ordinary mountain range. There were even some gravel on the ground. It didn't seem to match the legendary multicolored lights and terrifying roars that filled the sky. There was only a pool of blood in the center, faintly emitting a terrifying pressure, mixed with strands of black gold, as if it had been blown up by someone. Some people tried to collect the pool of blood, only to be jolted into an idiot. This was a top-notch expert half a step into the celestial realm, yet he was actually jolted into an idiot by a pool of blood. Everyone was shocked. However, there didn't seem to be anything out of the ordinary apart from this pool of blood. Why does this look like the legendary god's blood? It's boundless pressure and extremely terrifying, someone guessed. Impossible! God's blood is golden. Even the blood of a demon god is golden in color. It's impossible for it to be black gold like this. A knowledgeable person immediately refuted. Gods were essentially a kind of living creature. Even if they were from different races and different martial arts, they were essentially the same thing. They were existences that transcended ordinary living creatures. Could it be the blood of some unknown primordial creature? I remember that this pool of blood wasn't recorded in the personal records of our predecessors. So, it obviously didn't exist in the past. Someone made such a speculation. Many people agreed and agreed. This wasn't impossible because many people knew that this chaotic stone had existed for a very long time. In fact, many people didn't even know about a certain period of history. Yi Shiwen also slightly frowned. He also didn't know about this pool of blood. He had a hunch that if Yemo was here, he would definitely know about it. Unfortunately, he had fallen into a deep sleep. He didn't know when he would wake up again. Yi Shiwen couldn't help but sigh. At this time, an incomparably tyrannical figure in the sky slid down into the crowd silently. He appeared in the crowd almost in an instant. It was an old man dressed in black. His gaze was ordinary, and there was nothing special about him. However, many people who were glanced at by him immediately broke out in a cold sweat. They felt their bodies go numb, and they were unable to move. It's the Blood Knight Tower Master. Why is he here? At this time, someone recognized the identity of this old man. He was the Blood Knight Tower Master, one of the top 10 forces in the entire Chaos City. It was said that the Blood Knight Tower Master was a top expert of the Hidden Devil Clan, one of the 8 great demon clans. Among the 8 great demon clans, the Fallen Angel Clan was famous for its small number of people. Basically, the Hidden Devil Clan didn't exceed 100,000 people at most. It could be said that they were inferior to a small-scale demon clan. But even so, the Hidden Devil Clan was ranked as one of the 8 great demon clans. The biggest reason was that their assassination techniques were unparalleled in the Devil Realm. Even the most powerful demon gods didn't dare to say that they could avoid the assassination of these assassins who walked in the dark. The most abnormal thing was that these Hidden Devil Clan members could often assassinate people who were of a higher rank than them. So, these Hidden Devil Clan members were often the most difficult opponents to deal with. In Chaos City, the Blood Knight Tower Master was also one of the most difficult top experts to deal with. The Blood Knight Tower Master didn't even look at the others. He just looked at the pool of blood and frowned in silence. No matter what, let's take away this pool of blood first. At this time, the Blood Knight Tower Master waved his hand, and was about to take away the pool of blood. The Blood Knight Tower Master has a big appetite. Such a big pool of blood. At least leave some for us. At this time, a figure fell from the sky and landed on the ground. This directly stopped the Blood Knight Tower Master's action. Fan Lei, you dare to compete with me? The Blood Knight Tower Master said with a sneer. Why not? The person exuded a terrifying aura, and didn't give in. At this time, the people saw the identity of the person. It was a middle-aged human man. It's him, the solitary swordsman Fan Lei. Although he isn't one of the top 10 forces, his cultivation is at the peak of the 3rd heaven of the Sky Realm. I didn't expect that the opening of the fringe would attract him. Blood Knight Tower Master, if you have the guts, fight me head-on. If you win, I'll leave immediately. I won't say anything to you, Fan Lei said nonchalantly. The others were afraid of the Blood Knight Tower Master, who had a large business, a strong cultivation, and a strange cultivation method. However, what did he have to be afraid of? He would take the things and go far away. What could the others do to him? The Blood Knight Tower Master's expression was ugly, but he didn't attack out of anger. He was very clear that he was good at assassination. In terms of fighting head-on, he was probably the weakest among the experts. If he fought head-on at this time, he would be using his weakness to attack the enemy's strength. He couldn't do such a stupid thing. Humph, this is mine. Whoever dares to snatch it will die. At this time, another shocking demonic aura fell. Then, a horrible and ugly Azura appeared in the center of the field. You're too overbearing. Even if it's you, it's impossible for you to take it for yourself. Another expert of the human clan arrived. This time, it was a middle-aged woman of the human clan. Her body faintly carried a somewhat frightening aura, making people unable to get close. The arrival of these experts at the 3rd heaven of the Sky Realm made the experts present fall silent. In the face of these top experts, even they couldn't help but hold their breath, feeling that it was exceptionally frightening. After these people, another expert of the Devil Clan arrived. This was an expert of the original Devil Clan. The pair of wings on his body was somewhat similar to those of the Great Devil Clan, but it also seemed to have the characteristics of other Devil Clans. This was the original Devil Clan, an extremely special existence among the 8 royal clans. Legend had it that the original Devil Clan was the origin of all the Devil Clans in the Devil world. In other words, all the Devil Clans were split from the original Devil Clan. They were originally called the Devil Clan. Later, more and more Devil Clans appeared. In order to distinguish them, they also changed their name to the original Devil Clan. The meaning was very obvious. Because of this, the original Devil Clan was very proud. They thought that they were the orthodox bloodline of the Devil Clan. The other Devil Clans were simply branches that they had split off from. However, as one of the 8 royal clans of the Devil Clan, they indeed had this kind of qualification to be proud. They had this kind of capital and strength. This expert of the original Devil Clan glanced arrogantly at everyone and said, "What is there to fight over? The real wealth should be the inheritance left behind by the Devil God. If I'm not wrong, the wealth and inheritance left behind by that Devil God should be in this chaotic mountain. It won't be too late to fight over it after we find it." The experts thought for a while, and felt that it was somewhat reasonable. At this time, this expert of the original Devil Clan glanced at Yishiwen in the crowd, and immediately locked on to him. "Are you Mr. One?" At this time, the expert of the original Devil Clan said. He had come with ill intentions as soon as he opened his mouth, and directly rushed towards Yishiwen. Chapter 1447. Mr. Wen is in trouble. I'm afraid he doesn't know that the reason why Xue Zhu dared to bully the Heavenly Fire Chamber of Commerce in such an arrogant and domineering manner was because he had Xue Zhu's backing. Otherwise, he wouldn't have the guts to do so. However, I didn't expect that Xue Zhu would be killed by Yishiwen. How could he let Yishiwen off so easily with his arrogance? Some people immediately understood why this expert of the original Devil Clan had come to look for trouble with Yishiwen. Yishiwen wasn't afraid at all. He stepped forward and said, "I am." "What about it?" That original Demon Clan expert didn't say anything. He immediately attacked, and his Devil Claw tore through the air. Buzz! The Devil Claw fell, and issued a terrifying clanging sound. It instantly pounced towards Yishiwen. Clang! An 8-treasure universe cauldron appeared above Yishiwen's head, and protected him within it. Yishiwen's 8-treasure universe cauldron took on the Devil Claw of the original Demon Clan expert. At this time, Yishiwen also moved. He let out a long roar, and immediately launched a shattered star fist. It directly blasted towards the glabella of that original Demon Clan expert. He wasn't someone who could be easily bullied. Anyone who thought that he was someone who could be bullied at will would be gravely mistaken. He had seen countless strong people in his life. However, he had never shown any weakness. This was an earth-shattering showdown. Countless principles loomed in Yishiwen's fist Dao, and he blasted out the principles of fist Dao with his fist. Boom! A terrifying collision spread in all directions. Multicolored lights radiated, and countless martial arts currents were blasted away. The 2 experts shook violently, and retreated one after the other. Both of them had a horrified look in their eyes, especially the expert of the original Devil Clan. He had discovered that Yishiwen had become tyrannical to such an extent. Hiss, this Mr. Wen is so strong. I thought that he was only SOSO after defeating Xue Zhu. I didn't expect that he would be strong enough to compete with an expert at the peak of the 3rd heavenly layer. At this time, the eyes of the other tyrannical experts also flickered. They had underestimated Yishiwen before. The eyes of this original Demon Clan's expert flickered. No one knew what he was thinking. However, he could tell from the exchange just now that Yishiwen was also an extremely powerful person. He had completely misjudged him. A warrior of the late stage of half-step celestial realm could actually be this powerful. It was no wonder that Xue Zhu had died at his hands. This wasn't surprising at all. Your attack is over, but mine isn't. Yi Shiwen sneered, and immediately pounced towards him to kill. With a point of his finger, a towering cage appeared. Heaven imprisoning finger. In an instant, the experts of the original demon tribe seemed to be imprisoned, unable to move. It was as if their bodies had sunk into mud, unable to move at all. Just as the finger was about to touch his body, the expert from the original demon clan moved. With a loud roar, he punched out. Boom! Yi Shiwen pointed his finger at the cage, and it collapsed with a loud bang. This was a battle between two peerless experts. The experts of the original demon clan were afraid. However, Yi Shiwen was also an unforgiving person. How could he let this expert of the original demon clan off so easily? Enough! We didn't come here today to quarrel with each other, the beautiful human woman said at this time. However, her pretty face was as cold as frost, and she stood between the two of them. The experts of the original demon clan and Yi Shiwen looked at each other with very unfriendly expressions. However, neither of them made any further moves. For the experts of the original demon clan, it was somewhat not worth it to offend Yi Shiwen for the sake of Xue Zhu. If it weren't for Yi Shiwen's unforgiving and overbearing attitude, he would have already given up long ago. For Yi Shiwen, this time, it was more important to establish his prestige than anything else. It was enough to achieve such an outcome. At the same time, three figures loomed in the void in the distance. They were looking at Yi Shiwen in the crowd. They were the three experts of the demon suppression city. Sure enough, it's this little bastard. At this time, the third among the three said. His eyes were flashing with killing intent. I didn't expect that he has grown to such an extent. Even the experts of the third sky of the heaven realm can't do anything to him. If he continues to grow like this, how terrible would it be? Should we go down and kill him now? The second among the three said with killing intent. Such a person must be strangled in the cradle. What's the rush? Today they must all die. This news must not be spread out. Otherwise, it will be a very troublesome matter. At this time, the eldest among the three said, I have already sent a message to the Blood Knight Tower Lord. I believe he knows what to do. That thing has been injured by us, but it has escaped into the seal. Now, it will not be easy to lure it out. So, big brother, you sent a false message to lure them all here. Ha ha ha, they must know that they are already at death's door, but they don't know it, the third said with a loud laugh. He looked at the group of people in the distance as if he was looking at a group of dead people. This can't be regarded as false news. At least some of it is true. However, in order to lure that thing out again, we have no other choice. Brother Yi Kuang is now at a critical moment. He needs that thing. The eldest also had a slightly proud look on his face. Today, these people must die. And that little bastard is just one of them. He is nothing. We don't need to specially treat him. He will also die. In the field, the confrontation between the two finally stopped. Several top experts were faintly standing in the middle. Yi Shiwen was also allowed to join this circle because of the battle just now. Outside of them stood hundreds and thousands of experts. They were the top group of experts in Chaos City. Everyone stood there quietly. Everyone's divine sense had already swept through the chaotic mountain range. However, no matter how they swept, they couldn't find any clues. This chaotic mountain range was just like any other barren mountain range. There was nothing special about it. Ahem, I have a source of information. At this time, the Blood Knight Tower Master suddenly stood up and said. Everyone's gaze focused on him at once. However, at this time, the Blood Knight Tower Master said calmly at this time. There is a demon god's wealth and all the inheritance buried under this place. However, if we want to open it, we must have enough blood sacrifice. Everyone couldn't help but shiver when they heard this. Enough blood sacrifice? How many creatures would be sacrificed before it could be considered enough? Where can we find so many creatures for blood sacrifice now? The beautiful human woman said. It's very simple. Aren't there many people here? So many, it should be enough. At this time, the expert of Azura tribe said with a weird laugh. Hee hee. At this time, everyone couldn't help but feel a little scared. This Azura expert actually wanted to sacrifice them. How cruel and terrifying this was. Is this a joke? There are so many of us. How can we sacrifice all of them? Someone said in disbelief. Joke? I think it's a good idea, the original demon expert said with a sneer. He had just suffered a small loss in Yishuan's hands. At this time, he was in a bad mood and needed to vent his anger. There are so many people here. The blood sacrifice will eventually awaken Barren Mountain. Ha ha ha! At this time, many experts of Chaos City who were just watching from afar became vigilant. In the face of these top experts of the third heavenly layer of Heaven Realm, they couldn't be too careful. Fan Lei and the human expert were indifferent. Although they didn't say anything to support the idea, they didn't oppose it either. They were extremely indifferent. As far as they were concerned, nothing was more important than the demon god's treasure and inheritance. As for these people, they were just seeking death. Then let's do it. I think we should just kill them all. Anyway, this is enough. At this time, the Azura expert suddenly laughed strangely and roared. Are you crazy? We represent all the experts of Chaos City. Don't tell me you want to kill us all? Someone screamed. Why not? The expert from the original demon clan sneered. At this time, everyone finally realized that these top experts of the third heavenly layer of Heaven Realm didn't have any subordinates around them. In other words, even if they were to be sacrificed, it had nothing to do with them. They naturally didn't care. As for the anger of all the people of Chaos City, it didn't matter. As long as they could get the demon god's inheritance and treasure, a mere Chaos City was nothing. Moreover, they already represented the majority of Chaos City's strength. Who could rebel against them? Although there were still a few experts of the top 10 forces who didn't come, it didn't affect the overall situation. Yishuan frowned. These people had gone crazy for the so-called demon god's treasure. No matter how much blood sacrifice is needed, since we don't know, we will kill until enough is enough. Blood Knight Tower Master, you set up the formation and I will kill. Ha ha, this is my favorite. At that moment, the expert from the Azura clan leaped into the crowd and began a frenzied massacre. Poochie! 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 Every time he made a move, an expert would fall under his claws and explode into a bloody mist. At the same time, the Blood Knight Tower Master also began to set up this huge formation in the void according to what he had prepared beforehand. After a while, the other top experts also joined the battle. Suddenly, waves of screams came one after another. It was like purgatory on earth. Chapter 1448. In the face of the slaughter of these terrifying experts, these people could almost be said to have no power to fight back. Moreover, these experts at the peak of the third sky of Celestial Realm would explode them into blood fog while killing them. These people could not even escape. Once they tried to escape, someone would make a move to kill them first, leaving them with no chance at all. Fight! Let's fight with them! I don't believe that they can kill all of us. At this time, someone finally could not bear it anymore and began to roar. Everyone also began to resist crazily. There was no other way. Since they were going to die anyway, it was better to fight with their lives on the line. Therefore, the scene completely fell into chaos. Everyone fell into madness, and thousands of people fell into the slaughter. But even so, in the face of this group of experts who were already red-eyed and only thinking about the demon god's inheritance and treasures, they also fell into a complete disadvantage. It was basically a one-sided slaughter. The bloody aura began to quietly pervade the air. It was unknown how many people were killed and exploded into a mass of blood fog. The entire air was filled with a mass of bloody aura. Yishuan just quietly watched from the side and did not choose to join any side. There were several warriors who had already killed until their eyes were bloodshot, and had rushed to his side, but they were instantly killed by him on the spot. This made many warriors who had killed until their eyes were bloodshot and did not dare to approach him. Although he did not attack, but it was obvious that he was also a terrifying existence on the same level as those masters of the peak of the third heavenly layer. Between heaven and earth, the bloody aura became more and more intense. But what was surprising was that even with such a strong bloody aura, there was actually not a single fierce beast that rushed over because of it. Yi Shiwen waited quietly, looking at the people who had already killed until their eyes were red. Everyone did not notice, but he noticed that the corner of the Blood Knight Tower Master's mouth actually had a bit of a strange smile. This made his heart a bit suspicious. What exactly was being sacrificed in this blood sacrifice? What exactly was being sacrificed? Huff! 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 Suddenly, everyone only heard a burst of rapid breathing. Everyone stopped fighting because they found that the bloody aura between heaven and earth was decreasing at an alarming rate. In just a short while, the bloody aura between heaven and earth had completely disappeared. Boom! Terrifying rumbling sounds could be heard as the entire mountain range cracked open. Boundless multicolored light instantly covered the entire sky. Everyone knew that after half a day of blood sacrifice, the thing that was supposed to come out had finally come out. At this point in the battle, nearly half of the original 1,000 experts had been slaughtered, leaving only 500 to 600. But at this time, no one cared about this matter anymore. Everyone was looking at the crack filled with multicolored light. They all remembered the previous rumor about the sky full of multicolored light. But at this time, everyone became nervous. And in this sky full of multicolored light, a huge sharp claw directly stretched out and covered the sky. Suddenly, several people who could not escape in time were caught on the spot, directly grabbed into a mass of blood mist, and then turned into a massive torrent that was sucked over. Everyone was shocked and angry. What exactly was hidden in there? And then, a terrifying figure appeared in front of everyone. This figure was in front of everyone, but it seemed to be in a distorted space. Everyone couldn't see what was inside this figure at all. As soon as this monster appeared, it immediately rushed into the crowd and began a continuous massacre. It was just a prenatal checkup, but it had already slaughtered dozens of people. Everyone was dumbfounded. What exactly was this thing? And as more people were killed, the aura of this monster became more and more terrifying. It seemed to be absorbing the blood essence of the people to recover and grow at a crazy rate. "Hurry up and leave, this is a god's evil!" Someone shouted, and suddenly, everyone started to panic. This turned out to be a god's evil. Everyone was a bit dumbfounded. It wasn't that everyone didn't know what a god's evil was, but on the contrary, they knew what it was. Since the beginning of the existence of gods in this world, gods had been born along with them. If gods were said to be the embodiment of the good side, then God's evil was the embodiment of the evil side of gods. Normally, these gods' evil were suppressed in the depths of the gods' bodies, but once the gods fell into a deep sleep, these gods' evil would come out to do evil. As souls that died prematurely, God's evil continued to live, absorbing nourishment from their power that was close to that of gods and pure hatred towards their ancestors and all natural products. God's evil obtained a distorted, strange, and terrifying imprint during the birth of gods. There were countless types of God's evil, and they were all unimaginably terrifying to mortals. Cursed by heaven and hell, God's evil had been sealed for countless years. But as time passed, sometimes God's evil would be accidentally released, or break out of its cage on its own. The appearance of a God's evil could cause a country, a world, or even a plane to panic. To think that a God's evil, a creature that only existed in legends, would actually appear here. Could it be that a demon god had really been buried here? Originally, the rumors about the demon god were just between belief and disbelief. After all, after so many years of legends, no one had actually seen the demon god, including the so-called inheritance and wealth. As for whether the demon god really existed, many people were very skeptical. But now, If a demon god had really been buried here, then the appearance of a god's evil wouldn't be strange at all. But the truly terrifying thing was that a god's evil was the embodiment of the evil side of gods. Although it was merely an embodiment, it possessed terrifying strength that no one could match. From the moment it appeared, no one was a match for it. On the contrary, they were completely defeated. Wherever it went, there would be a reign of terror. At this moment, everyone finally remembered that blob of blood. That black and gold color isn't the blood of gods, but the blood of a god's evil. Heavens, what kind of monster have we provoked? Run, run! Run! Run away from the land of chaos! The entire land of chaos isn't safe! Everyone was dumbfounded. That god's evil attacked again. With a swipe of its claw, the entire world changed color, and a huge crack appeared. In the blink of an eye, more than 100 people were crushed. They couldn't even escape. Everyone was fleeing frantically. Even the bloody Night Tower Master and the others who had been wantonly slaughtering were no exception. At this time, Yi Shiwen and the others were also fleeing frantically. This was a god's evil, so no matter what, it was much more terrifying than everyone else. The god's evil at the back was in hot pursuit. It rushed into the crowd and began a massacre. Bang! It opened its huge hand and suddenly swiped its claw, directly grabbing that beautiful woman from the human clan. This expert at the peak of the third heaven of the celestial realm didn't have any power to retaliate, and was crushed right away. In front of this god's evil, they didn't have any advantage over those half-step celestial realm warriors, and they were crushed right away. Moreover, this god's evil seemed to specifically choose experts with strong blood chi to hunt down. Those third heaven of the celestial realm experts had been abnormally active and had monstrous murderous intent, but at this moment, they became the path to death for them. Instead, they became the first targets to be killed. After that human woman, the expert from the original demon clan also followed closely behind and was crushed on the spot. Their speed was extremely fast, but compared to the speed of this god's evil, it seemed to be far inferior. Just as they were about to escape from this mountain range, the colorful clouds in the sky turned into walls and locked onto them. All of a sudden, everyone screamed. This was cutting off all their chances of survival. However, at this time, there was almost no other way. Everyone could only turn back and fight against this abomination god. However, as expected, they had no chance of winning against this terrifying abomination god. No matter how many people rushed over, they were all blasted into a mist of blood on the spot. Pft! 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 Experts from the human clan and the devil clan were constantly crushed into a bloody mist, and then devoured alive. The aura of this god's evil was also becoming more and more terrifying. This god's evil was severely injured by someone, and now it's eating to recover from its injuries. Everyone finally came back to their senses. God's evil had the sparks of divinity. Therefore, unless they were destroyed, they were almost immortal. However, this god's evil had clearly been severely injured, which was why it was devouring them to recover from its injuries. Not only did everyone not feel relieved, but they also felt even more terrified. Who could seriously injure this god's evil? It could recover from ordinary injuries in the blink of an eye. If it was injured to the point where it needed to devour flesh and blood to recover, then everyone present would probably not be enough for it to eat. Sure enough, no matter how many people it devoured, this god's evil was not satisfied. In the blink of an eye, there were only 100 people left after it devoured them. The other 900 people either died in the internal strife or were all buried in this god's evil stomach. Ha! At this time, there was a sudden loud roar, followed by a shocking saber radiance tearing through the sky and directly blasting the colorful clouds. Boom! There was an intense collision, and the saber radiance violently collided with the colorful clouds wall. Crack, crack! Cracks began to appear on the colorful clouds wall. Then, with a loud bang, the entire colorful clouds wall finally could not withstand the impact and suddenly collapsed. Chapter 1449. The emergence immortal exterminating saber's terrifying saber radiance swept across the void and shattered the five-colored glowing wall. In the distance, the three experts from the demon-suppressing city lineage had a drastic change in their expressions. Yishuan's saber slashed and broke the trap they had set up. If these people escaped, it would be very troublesome for them. "That damned little bastard, do it!" the leader of the three instantly roared. "Big brother, what should we do with this little bastard?" The second among the three clearly saw Yishuan suddenly unleash a shocking saber aura. Although it was too fast, so they couldn't clearly see what kind of saber aura it was enough for them to make a judgment. At this moment, the leader of the three gritted his teeth and said, "Let's ignore him for now. Someone will deal with this little bastard sooner or later. It's more important for us to hunt down that abomination god. Now, junior brother Yiquan needs this abomination god." Originally, he wanted to let the abomination god kill all these people. That way, they could save a lot of effort. However, who knew that Yishuan would suddenly attack and directly shatter the barrier, causing them to have no choice but to choose to intervene in advance. As for Yishuan, they could only let him go for now. Otherwise, fighting on two sides and fighting with such an abomination god would only be a dead end. "That's right. At this time, we can only let this little bastard go. Damn it, this little bastard actually ruined our plans," the third among them said furiously at this moment. "Do it, hunt down the abomination god!" the leader roared and instantly attacked. The terrifying strength of the peak of the 6th level of the celestial realm was displayed in an instant, and the entire sky rumbled and shook. The three terrifying experts instantly rushed into the group of experts. The terrifying shockwave that descended directly injured several experts and blasted them away. Everyone was dumbfounded. They didn't know the background of these three people. They actually dared to appear at this time to hunt the abomination god. However, at this time, no one dared to stay. Regardless of whether it was the abomination god or the three terrifying experts, they were far from being able to deal with them. No matter which side won, it would be a disaster for them. At this time, no one dared to stay anymore. They were all scared stiff. Today was a crazy day of killing. Only 100 people were left out of the thousands. Such a loss, even if it wasn't a complete annihilation, it was more or less the same. Every side had suffered heavy losses. It was already good enough that they could survive, let alone have any other ideas. Everyone rushed out from the gap and fled into the distance. To them, escaping with their lives was like a dream, like a miracle. However, Yishuan frowned because he clearly felt that those three terrifying experts had a strong hostility towards him. He believed that he wouldn't be wrong about this. It was a very strong hostility, as if they couldn't wait to peel off his skin and pull out his tendons. This suddenly gave him an idea. After pretending to go out with the others, he quietly snuck back by himself. He used the restraining breath technique to hold back all the breath on his body, not letting even the slightest bit of it leak out. He wanted to see what kind of divine being could actually have such a strong hostility toward him. At this time, the three experts were already fighting with the abomination god. The strength of this abomination god was clearly much more tyrannical than the three of them. It seemed to have a terrifying ability to destroy heaven and earth with just a raise of its hand or a kick. It made Yishuan think of a terrifying expert like the Yi Clan master. However, although the strength of these three experts was inferior to this divine sense, they carried a simple and unadorned mirror. This mirror blossomed with a terrifying light, and wherever it swept, the void would completely collapse. The abomination god was swept by it, and its entire arm instantly evaporated. "Hiss, this instrument is so terrifying!" Yishuan couldn't help but exclaim. This had definitely surpassed the level of a heaven-grade instrument. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so terrifying. It might even be on the same level as the emergence immortal exterminating saber. This was Yishuan's first time seeing such a terrifying instrument in the ancient Baron's continent. Such an instrument was definitely a terrifying existence that could suppress the fate of a faction. Even if the Yi clan was countless times more tyrannical than the true martial domain, it was impossible for them to casually take out such an instrument. Now, such an instrument had actually appeared here. In order to hunt down this abomination god, they had put in a lot of effort. Huff, huff! Although this ancient mirror was extremely powerful, their strength was obviously insufficient to control this ancient mirror. After a while, they were already panting. Fortunately, the abomination god wasn't any better. Although it ran extremely fast, it was still swept by the light of the ancient mirror a few times, and it was directly injured. At this moment, it didn't have any spare energy to launch any attacks. It could only roar and stare at the three of them. Previously, he was injured by these three people. He didn't expect to encounter these three people again. This made him very depressed. He was the incarnation of the evil will of a deity. Although he was incomparably evil, he was practically the other side of a deity. What did these people count as? These insignificant mortals actually used that side of the ancient scripture to injure him again and again. Thinking of this, it couldn't help but roar in anger. Suddenly, a sinister and evil smile flashed across the corner of its mouth. Whoosh! Its entire body turned into a cloud of blood mist. When it condensed again, it was already in front of the third brother. It directly spread out its huge hand, and a claw suddenly slashed down. Hula! The entire void seemed to be torn apart in an instant. Endless airwaves swept out, and countless smoke and dust swept up. Third brother, be careful! The eldest brother hurriedly shouted. But at this time, it was simply too late. The abomination god clawed the third brother until he exploded. His claws pierced through the third brother's chest and crushed his heart. Then, the abomination god pulled out the third brother's heart and swallowed it. The entire scene was extremely cruel. After swallowing the third brother's heart, the abomination god looked up to the sky and roared. It actually recovered some of its spirit, and it was even more terrifying than before. Yi Shiwen was secretly surprised. Both sides were very terrifying. One side's strength was invincible enough to shake the world, while the other side wielded a magic tool that was also incomparably powerful. Damned evil creature! The eldest brother watched helplessly as his brother was swallowed. He immediately burned with anger, and he let out a loud roar. Then, the ancient mirror in his hand erupted with a powerful light, and directly blasted the abomination god's body. The abomination god's back was instantly blasted into a bloody mess. Black golden blood splattered out, and it directly staggered from the attack. Its entire body was blasted away, and it violently crashed into a mountain peak. It directly broke the mountain peak, and turned it into powder. One could imagine how terrifying this kind of power was. Go to hell, you beast! The second brother was also burning with anger, and he blasted towards the abomination god. His palm turned into a towering mountain, and it crashed down. Boom! The abomination god looked up to the sky and roared. In an instant it attacked, and it blasted a punch out. Boom! The entire sky seemed to have collapsed all of a sudden. That mountain was blasted away, and the second brother was blasted into a cloud of blood mist on the spot. Immediately after, the abomination god opened its mouth and sucked, and the cloud of blood mist was sucked into its stomach on the spot. There was a look of longing on its face. The quality of the blood essence of an expert at the sixth heaven of the celestial realm was naturally much better than that of the half-step celestial realm and celestial realm. It could almost be said that one abomination god could replace all of them. Unfortunately, the real problem was that there were too few of them. Including the third brother, there were only two of them. He looked at the eldest brother almost instantly, and his eyes were filled with greed. Die, you beast! The eldest brother let out a loud roar, and the light from the ancient mirror in his hand swept out continuously. The sky fell and the earth cracked everywhere. There were originally restrictions below, but at this time, they were also completely shattered. Heaven and earth were completely shattered into pieces. Even the restrictions were unable to withstand such a terrifying destructive power. It looked exceptionally terrifying from afar, and even chaos was pouring out. Yishuan had no choice but to hide even further away. The place where he was previously had also completely collapsed. The self-recovery ability of the space could not keep up with the terrifying destructive power of this mirror. The eldest brother seemed to have gone crazy. 2 of his brothers had died tragically one after another, and it was a huge blow to him. If he did not kill this abomination god, he would not be able to face his brother's spirits in heaven. Roar! This abomination god was hit a few times in a row, and its vitality was greatly damaged. It was as if all the nourishment it had taken just now had been wasted all of a sudden, and it kept roaring. Countless energy balls in its body flew out in a frenzy, and then formed a huge energy ball in the sky, which blasted toward the eldest brother. The eldest brother also seemed to have gone crazy, and he exerted all his strength to urge the ancient mirror in his hand to burst forth with a powerful light, which swept out. Boom! An earth-shattering and terrifying collision occurred, and the aftermath destroyed everything, causing heaven and earth to once again fall into the legendary state of chaos before it was formed. Bang! In the endless chaos, a figure was directly blasted out. It was the eldest brother, but at this time, there was an ecstatic look on his face, and he laughed loudly. Ha 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 ha, you beast, you're still going to die! As he laughed, he coughed up blood frantically. Among the blood, there were pieces of his internal organs. His internal organs had been completely shattered by that terrifying collision, and he kept coughing up blood. Heaven and earth returned to peace, and the smoke and dust dispersed. Yishuan saw that the abomination god was lying on the ground, and he kept roaring. Chapter 1450. At this time, the majestic abomination god was already seriously injured. His chest was penetrated by the mirror's light wave. The energy on the light wave had a great restraining effect on him. His wound was expanding step by step, and he couldn't stop it at all. Ha ha ha, beast, in the end, you still fell into my hands. The leader stood up with difficulty, and immediately made a hand seal. Countless talismans in the sky began to float around frantically. Then, they connected to form a talisman chain that instantly locked the abomination's body. The chain pierced through its shoulder blade and firmly locked it in place. It turned out to be a heaven-rank celestial artifact. It had actually refined a talisman puppet into a celestial artifact. This could not be said to not be a big deal. The abomination god screamed miserably, but it was restrained by the talisman puppet. Haha, let's see how you can break free now. When junior brother Yiquan devours you, his cultivation will rise to another level. At that time, he will be invincible in the Imperial Court contest. At that time, it won't be in vain that my 2 younger brothers died in your hands, said the boss with a sorrowful expression. Yiquan. Yishuan was shocked. Zhong Batian, Yiquan. With the word Kuang in his name, Zhong Batian was extremely arrogant. Except for a few people in the entire Yi family, the rest were not in his eyes. His eyes seemed to have already locked on to the new generation of geniuses in the entire ancient Barons continent. Then, the identity of this person was obvious. Someone from the demon suppression city was so hostile towards him in this demon domain passage. At the same time, he also had such powerful strength. He definitely couldn't be from the Thunder Demon hunting group. There was only one possibility, and that was an expert from the demon suppression city. Yijin Mo had been presiding over the demon suppression city for so many years, and it was unknown how many experts he had nurtured. Yiquan was one of the most famous, but it didn't mean that he was the only one. There were also various other experts, and they all formed the demon suppression city. Hence, Yijin Mo was able to have such great authority in the demon domain passage. Otherwise, it was impossible for him to achieve this alone. So, he came to hunt this abomination god for Yiquan? They paid such a huge price just to let Yiquan devour the divine sin? Yishuan couldn't help but be shocked by Yijin Mo lineage's generosity. What was a god's sin? It was practically the incarnation of the evil side of the gods. It was immortal and indestructible. Even if the gods fell, these gods' sins wouldn't be destroyed. In fact, they would even absorb the resentment of the gods when they fell and become even more prosperous. For ordinary people, it was an existence that was impossible to redeem. In order to redeem this abomination, the demon-suppressing city had indeed paid a considerable price. Putting aside the two experts at the 6th layer of the sky tier who had been killed on the spot, just the ancient mirror alone was an incredible treasure. Of course, if they could successfully capture the abomination god, then everything they paid would be worth it. Moreover, if Yi Kuang really devoured the abomination god and obtained some sort of power, his strength would greatly improve. Perhaps, even among the younger generation of the entire ancient Barrens continent, it would be hard for him to meet a worthy opponent. Regarding the legend of Yi Kuang, after offending Yijin Mo to death, he had once deliberately collected information about him. It was said that he had already stepped into the 5th layer of the sky tier a long time ago. Some people also said that he had already stepped into the 6th layer of the sky tier. However, if he really allowed himself to devour the abomination god, his cultivation would definitely soar in the end. It was already terrifying enough, and in the end, he would probably be invincible in the world. When that time came, even if Yi Shiwen could participate in the royal court contest, he might be ambushed by Yi Kuang. Such a thing definitely couldn't happen. The boss laughed out loud, and as he laughed, tears of blood flowed out. Suddenly, a terrifying sound of breaking through the air could be heard, and a shocking aura swept across. Who? At that moment, his body abruptly scuttled, and he directly left his original position. Boom! The place where he originally stood completely collapsed. As expected of an expert at the 6th layer of the sky tier. Even in such a situation, you can actually dodge my attack. At that moment, a slightly mocking voice was heard. It's you? The boss turned his head and saw an unforgettable scene. The person who sneaked up on him was actually Yi Shiwen, whom he had been scheming to kill. Why? Are you surprised to see me? Weren't you scheming to get rid of me previously? Yi Shiwen sneered. Although he didn't see it, after knowing their identities, he could almost guess it even with his toes. You've really worn out iron shoes in vain. I originally planned to let you off today, but I didn't expect you to come to me yourself. You're really seeking death, said the boss with a sneer. Seeking death? I think this person isn't me, but you. In your current state, can you still fight? Yi Shiwen sneered and looked at the boss. If he was in perfect condition, Yi Shiwen might only have a chance to kill him with the help of the emergence immortal exterminating saber. However, he and the abomination god were both injured, and his strength had plummeted. The threat to Yi Shiwen had also plummeted, and this gave Yi Shiwen the confidence to fight him. It's more than enough to kill you, little bastard! The boss sneered and took a step forward. His chi and blood boiled, and it was extremely terrifying. The void collapsed in large areas, and the real essence swept out like waves. Bluff! Yi Shiwen said disdainfully. Swish! His figure suddenly moved, and a heaven-grade celestial artifact long saber appeared in his hand. He suddenly slashed down with the saber, and endless flames instantly filled the sky. In an instant, he had already killed his way to the front of the leader's face. The boss almost instantly felt the threatening sharpness of the heaven-level weapon. He raised his hand and blocked it with the ancient mirror. Clang! There was a violent collision sound, and he took a few steps back on the spot. His entire arm was faintly numb, and his eyes were extremely shocked. Yi Shiwen's strength was actually so great that even with the protection of the ancient mirror, there was no way to completely cut it off. If it was purely a competition of physical strength and strength, he might not be this kid's opponent. Thinking of this, the murderous intent in his eyes became even stronger. Such a person could not grow up, or he would definitely become the mortal enemy of the Demon Suppression clan. At this time, Yi Shiwen was also a little stunned because the heaven-level long saber that he had seized from the alien race had actually cracked, and the ancient mirror had not changed at all. It was extremely terrifying. However, he did not stop at all, and once again slashed down with the saber. The terrifying saber light directly swept out boundless flames, and once again slashed down. Boom! 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 Yi Shiwen continuously slashed down with the saber, and every time he slashed down, the boss would be blasted away on the spot. However, the cracks on the heaven-level long saber in Yi Shiwen's hand were getting bigger and bigger, but Yi Shiwen did not care at all. For him, whether it was a heaven-level or an earth-level weapon, there was no difference. They were just tools, and as long as it could kill him, a mere tool was nothing. Break for me! Yi Shiwen let out a loud roar, and the long saber in his hand rose against the wind, and fiercely slashed down. Boom! With a loud buzzing sound, the heavenly level long blade in Yi Shiwen's hand completely disintegrated. This heavenly level low-level divine tool that had accompanied Yi Shiwen for several years finally couldn't bear the pressure, and disintegrated. That terrifying shockwave shook Yi Shiwen's arm and made it slightly numb. Puff! The boss directly spat out a mist of blood, mixed with fragments of internal organs, and his whole body was blasted away in an instant. His face instantly turned pale. Such a force might be nothing for him at his peak, but now that he was in a seriously injured state, it was definitely enough to completely blast him to death. Clang! The ancient mirror in his hand instantly flew to the side, and directly smashed a mountain before falling down. Today, you will stop here, Yi Shiwen said coldly, looking down from the sky. Without this ancient mirror, let's see if you still have the ability to struggle. You can't, the boss said with difficulty. That belongs to Brother Yi Kuang. The demon-suppressing city will absolutely not rest until you are dead. So what if I am dead? Isn't it already a dead end now? Yi Shiwen sneered and said. For him, the demon-suppressing city's lineage and him were already irreconcilable enemies. As for the people of the demon-suppressing city's lineage, this was not the case. In their opinion, Yi Shiwen was just a clown who could be pinched to death at any time. Although he was talented, it was useless as long as he didn't grow up. There was no such thing as an irreconcilable enemy. That was why there was such a threat, but for Yi Shiwen, such a threat seemed so ridiculous. Whoosh! Yi Shiwen raised his hand, and a terrifying seven light flashed out, fiercely rushing towards the boss. Boom! How could the boss, who was already seriously injured, withstand Yi Shiwen's consecutive blows? He was directly nailed to the ground by Yi Shiwen's energy, and died with his eyes wide open. Until now, he still could not imagine that in the end, he would die in the hands of Yi Shiwen, an ant in his eyes. The abomination that he had painstakingly captured had now become Yi Shiwen's spoils of war. Yi Shiwen did not even look at the boss, and just plundered all the wealth on him. There were hundreds of billions of spirit crystals, and all of them fell into Yi Shiwen's hands, making Yi Shiwen unprecedentedly rich. However, for the abomination, these gains were nothing at all. This was the biggest treasure that Yi Shiwen had obtained on this trip. Roar! The abomination roared continuously, and actually absorbed the resentment of the boss in the sky before his death, faintly recovering a little. Chapter 1451. The abominations themselves were the embodiment of the dark side of the gods. They absorbed all negative energy to grow. This was almost their innate instinct. The boss's resentment before his death was so great that it actually helped him recover a little. Roar! The abomination god kept roaring, but it was useless. The talisman chains had locked its shoulder blades, so it couldn't use any of its strength. In other words, all of its strength had been locked by the special talisman chains. This chain was specially refined for the purpose of capturing this abomination this time. Naturally, it was extraordinary. It faintly restrained the power of this abomination. Foolish human, I'm a god. As long as you let me go, I'll grant you divine techniques and make you immortal. At this time, the abomination kept roaring. It spoke human language for the first time. At this time, this abomination seemed unusually holy. It actually had the appearance of a god. In other words, they and the gods themselves were two sides of the same coin. They were split from the evil thoughts of the gods. To a certain extent, it wasn't an exaggeration to say that they were gods. Many people knew that abominations couldn't grant divine techniques, but they still worshipped them and worshipped these evil abominations. You're just a mere abomination. How dare you pretend to be a god? You don't know what's good for you. Yishiwen sneered. You! This abomination didn't expect Yishiwen to reject it so straightforwardly. As long as you're willing to let me go, I'll teach you the martial arts that only belong to the gods. I'll also teach you various divine techniques and comprehension of the great Tao. As long as you let me go, I'll give you all these in exchange. Yishiwen suddenly felt a little excited. The martial arts belonging to the gods would undoubtedly be profound to a terrifying extent. For many people, the martial arts of the gods were undoubtedly a kind of legend. However, for the abominations, it was nothing more than a piece of cake. They were the other side of the gods. You're trying to trick me. If you really know how to do it, how could you have been caught just now? At this time, Yishiwen suddenly reacted. The martial arts of the gods were extremely terrifying. If this abomination really knew how to do it, why didn't it use it just now? If it had used it, the three of them might not have been able to take down this abomination. The abomination's eyes suddenly evaded Yishiwen's gaze as if Yishiwen had hit the mark. However, it only lasted for a moment before it regained its calm. It said, "What's so strange about that? The martial arts of the gods are infinitely powerful, but it's not something that can be used by ordinary people. It can only be used under extremely harsh circumstances. If it were an ordinary person, they would probably have already believed the words of this abomination." However, who was Yishiwen? He was afraid that this ancient mirror also had an extraordinary origin. If he let it go now, then he might regret it for the rest of his life. Moreover, Yishiwen had a bold and crazy idea in his mind. That was, Yemo had now fallen into a deep sleep. But conversely, if he could swallow this ancient mirror, then would he wake up in advance and ascend to the extreme in one breath? Thinking of this, Yishiwen couldn't calm down. For other people, this ancient mirror could be said to be priceless. In fact, it couldn't even be described as priceless. In fact, it could even be considered as a clan's guardian divine tool. It was an incomparable existence. Compared to the current Tianyuan mirror, it was not just a little more powerful. But for Yishiwen, no matter how powerful he was, it could not be more important than Yemo. It could not be more important than Tianyuan mirror. Not only because Tianyuan mirror had unlimited potential, but in the future, it had the opportunity to reach the peak again and become an existence at the level of the demon monarch's treasure. In the entire devil domain, it was also an existence at the level of an ancestor. But for him, the most important thing was that Yemo had accompanied him to conquer the world. After so many expeditions, he had already become a friend who could entrust life and death to him. Although he did not say anything, he did treat Yemo as a brother. Although he was only a tool spirit, for Yishiwen, he was the only person in the world that he could trust. If he could not even trust Yemo, then Yishiwen did not know who else could he trust in this life. So if he could wake Yemo up in advance, even if Tianyuan mirror had to swallow this ancient mirror, Yishiwen would not hesitate. He would not even frown. Moreover, Yishiwen already had the emergence immortal exterminating saber. He didn't lack it at all. In comparison, Yemo was more important. Boom! 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 The countless energy on this ancient mirror spread wildly and bombarded. The flesh on Yishiwen's palm was bombarded again and again. It was badly mutilated, but he healed it instantly with the Phoenix regeneration technique. Once again, he fought against this ancient mirror. He wanted to subdue this ancient mirror with his own strength. Last time, he used the emergence immortal exterminating saber. He used a shortcut, more or less with the help of the predecessors. But this time, to subdue this ancient mirror, it was his own battle. No matter how many times the flesh on his palm crumbled, he quickly recovered. His face remained unchanged, as if it was not affected at all. He was a little surprised to find that as the flesh on his palm continued to crumble and then condense, his palm was obviously more tyrannical than other parts of his body, as if it had been strengthened. This discovery made him a little excited, but he quickly calmed down. The reason was very simple. Although this method seemed good, in fact, it was not very useful for someone like Yishiwen who had cultivated the tyrant body to the 9th level. In addition to this ancient mirror, there were few things that could shatter his tyrant body. Even if there were such things, it was impossible to only exert such power like this ancient mirror. It might even shock Yishiwen to death on the spot. There was no feasible way to use this method to train. "Who dares to covet my magic weapon?" At this time, a loud roar came from this ancient mirror. Yishiwen was very familiar with this voice. Almost in an instant, he recognized that this was the voice of Yijinmo. It might be a wisp of Yijinmo's spirit. In other words, this ancient mirror might be Yijinmo's personal magic tool. It was just that he had bestowed it to these 3 people to capture the abomination of God. Who would have thought that they would be in danger of being annihilated now? It would actually fall into Yishiwen's hands. At this time, the spirit of Yijinmo that was controlling the magic weapon finally awakened, and it roared to scare Yishiwen away. "So what if you covet it?" Yishiwen sneered. Not only did he not retreat, but on the contrary, a page of ancient god scripture rose above his head. On it sat a deity whose face could not be seen clearly. Upon a closer look, it turned out to be Yishiwen himself. The deity he worshipped turned out to be himself. The deity on the ancient mirror chanted the ancient mirror, and countless golden lights radiated out, suppressing the spirit in this ancient mirror. Chapter 1452. The god that was conjured from the ancient god scripture was Yishiwen's imagination. It had all the insights of the ancient mirror. Therefore, it was not surprising that it conjured himself. At this moment, the ancient mirror shook wildly, trying to escape from the ancient scripture. "Suppress again!" The Tianyuan mirror in Yishiwen's body conjured again and suppressed it directly. The boundless blood light suppressed everything, and the 2 ancient mirrors were fighting in the sky. However, this ancient mirror was not comparable to the Tianyuan mirror. The Tianyuan mirror was no longer at its peak power, but this ancient mirror was different. It was at its peak, and there was no one controlling it. Otherwise, it would be enough to blast Yishiwen to death. The ancient mirror directly sent the Tianyuan mirror flying. In addition, the Tianyuan mirror was not controlled by Yemo, so its power had decreased a lot. Although it had already entered the heaven rank, it was still sent flying on the spot. "Suppress!" Yishiwen gritted his teeth. No matter what, he directly took out the Emergence Immortal Exterminating Saber this time. The Emergence Immortal Exterminating Saber, which was exuding boundless power, had just appeared. As if it had received a violent blow, the endless saber light automatically swept up. With the saber as the center, it swept into a huge cyclone storm with a diameter of hundreds of meters. At this time, this ancient mirror also instantly burst into a powerful light to resist the power of the Emergence Immortal Exterminating Saber. Crack! 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 In the middle of the battle between the 2 martial instruments, the space began to shatter inch by inch like fragile glass. Boom! The space finally couldn't bear it, and completely shattered. Then, countless chaos poured out. Many experts who had fled far away also saw this terrifying scene at this time. They couldn't help but take a breath of cold air. They were slightly glad that such a terrifying battle was really not something they could participate in. Although this ancient mirror resisted very fiercely, the Emergence Immortal Exterminating Saber seemed to be strongly stimulated and began to suppress it more intensely. Yishiwen could even feel a strong sense of excitement from the Emergence Immortal Exterminating Saber. Its original tool spirit had been erased by Yishiwen for hundreds of years. Now, it had faintly regained its spirituality. It was still too early to form a tool spirit again, but it already had some self-awareness. Yishiwen didn't intend to erase this tool spirit. After all, this tool spirit was under his control. So, it was naturally completely different from the original tool spirit of the old ghost. The original artifact spirit was said to be an immortal-like existence. How could he be at ease? The chanting of the ancient god's spirit scripture became louder and louder. Every single word was like a pearl, forming Tao runes that pressed down from the sky. Tianyuan Mirror also joined in the suppression. Yishuan couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. He would have used the word seal to seal it if he hadn't been able to suppress it for a long time. No matter what, he would never let this ancient mirror escape. It was absolutely impossible to subdue this ancient mirror with his own strength. Fortunately, he had a few extraordinary items on him. But even so, with Yishuan's current strength, he couldn't do anything to the ancient mirror. He could only suppress it for now. After suppressing the ancient mirror, Yishuan looked at the abomination god again and sneered. At this moment, the abomination god no longer had the indignation and mockery from before. It had also seen through Yishuan's terrifying abilities and extraordinary techniques. Yishuan left the land of chaos after he absorbed the abomination god into the celestial being boundary. His harvest this time was already big enough. If he could absorb this abomination god, then the benefits would naturally be self-evident. However, the most important thing was that he had cut off one of Yiquang's advancement paths. By the time Yishuan returned to the city of chaos, the entire city was in a mess. Thousands of experts had gone there, but only a mere 100 had managed to escape. This was a huge loss, especially since several of the leaders of the top 10 forces had died tragically on the spot. Without a leader, it could be said that another round of reshuffling was about to happen. Under such circumstances, although the Heavenly Fire Chamber of Commerce had also suffered heavy losses due to the death of a large number of experts, not only had their president recovered to his original state, but his skills had also improved tremendously. He had rushed into the third celestial realm in one go and re-established his position as one of the top 10 forces. This was sufficient proof that only true top-notch experts had the strength and ability to control everything. Even the tragic deaths of Uncle Lin and the others could not stop the Heavenly Fire Chamber of Commerce from rising again. On the same day that everyone returned from the land of chaos, a terrifying coercion instantly descended upon the city of chaos. Immediately after, a large number of experts entered the city and began a massacre. Many experts of the demon race were slaughtered, and even many experts of the human race who had deep ties with the demon race died tragically. Not a single one was spared. The entire city of chaos was plunged into a reign of terror. Soon, everyone came to know that the demon-suppressing city had arrived. Among the top 10 cities of the Yi family, the demon-suppressing city was the most hostile towards the demon race. They were already very dissatisfied with the existence of the land of chaos. In their eyes, it was either black or white, nothing more. Soon, the reason for the demon-suppressing city's sudden arrival spread. It was said that several important figures of the demon-suppressing city had died tragically in the land of chaos, and the demon-suppressing mirror, the demon-suppressing city's city lord, was lost in the land of chaos. That was why the demon-suppressing city was so furious. At this time, the people of Chaos City learned that even the people of the demon-suppressing city had participated in the previous opening of the land of chaos. Although they didn't know what they were looking for, it was obvious that it was no small matter. Many experts from the demon-suppressing city frequently came out and searched Chaos City over and over again, but they couldn't find anything that might be related to this matter. That was because from the information they received, the people in Chaos City couldn't threaten the experts they sent out, not to mention the fact that they had the demon-suppressing mirror in hand. Even an expert at the peak of the heaven realm could escape unscathed. Although Chaos City had a special status, it didn't have any experts, so it was impossible for them to have such ability. As for slaughtering all the demons, it was just an act of venting their anger. However, the demon-suppressing city didn't let the matter go. The death of a few experts was still bearable, but the loss of the demon-suppressing mirror was absolutely unbearable. The illustrious reputation of the demon-suppressing mirror had made countless contributions to the Yi family for countless years. It was just that it was now in the hands of Yi Zhenmo. Even the Yi family didn't have many such magic tools, so they couldn't afford to lose even one. However, there was nothing they could do at this time. After more than 10 days of searching, the people of the demon-suppressing city had to admit that the three people might have really fallen in the hands of that abomination. Even the demon-suppressing mirror was devoured. At present, this was the only reasonable explanation. It would take another few hundred years to open the land of chaos. By that time, it would be too late. Even so, they had no choice but to endure. There was even a rumor that this matter had directly alarmed the higher-ups of the Yi family, and they held a meeting that very night. The death of a few celestial realm experts was nothing, but the loss of the demon-suppressing mirror was the real big deal. This matter quickly spread to the ears of the upper echelons of the Yi family, and Yi Zhenmo was also under tremendous pressure because of this. The suppressing demon mirror had a great effect on the suppressing demon city, and even the entire demon world channel. It was hard to imagine. The suppressing demon mirror had killed countless experts of the demon race to establish its illustrious prestige. Without the deterrence of the suppressing demon mirror, those experts of the demon race would become restless again, especially the suppressing demon city. It could be said that their vitality had been damaged. The so-called demon-suppressing city was not founded by Yi Zhenmo, but had been passed down for a very long time. It had been passed down from generation to generation, and had a deep foundation. Otherwise, Yi Zhenmo wouldn't have been able to cultivate a peerless genius disciple like Zhong Badian. The demon-suppressing mirror had been passed down for countless years, but it was actually lost in his hands. How could he not bear the huge pressure? There was also a rumor that many higher-ups were very dissatisfied with him using the demon-suppressing mirror, which was used to suppress a region, to hunt down abominations and use it for his disciples' advancement. They proposed an impeachment, asking Yi Zhenmo to withdraw from the demon-suppressing city. In addition, Yi Zhenmo was usually arrogant and eccentric, and no one knew how many people he had offended. Normally, no one would say anything, but in such a situation where he had committed a monstrous mistake, there were many people who hit him when he was down. There was even a rumor that there was a figure like the Law Enforcement Hall's Hall Master, Yi Zhentian. Although the demon-suppressing city was extremely powerful, compared to a colossus like the Law Enforcement Hall, it was still far inferior. The power of the demon-suppressing city was mainly concentrated in the passage to the demon realm, while the Law Enforcement Hall's tentacles covered the entire Yi family, and even the entire ancient Baron's continent. There was a clear difference between the two. Previously, Yi Zhenmo, that old bastard, had personally dealt with Yi Shiwen. Although it was only a spirit incarnation, it was already shameless enough in his eyes. Moreover, Yi Shiwen was forced to hide in the passage to the demon realm, and no one knew if he was still alive or not. It was simply touching his reverse scale. And at this time, the culprit who caused all this, Yi Shiwen, did not even go near Chaos City after leaving the land of chaos. Yi Zhenmo personally descended, and Yi Shiwen felt that terrifying power immediately. He did not dare to approach at all, and quietly left. After staying around Chaos City for a period of time, Yi Shiwen learned that the Heavenly Fire Chamber of Commerce had recovered, and that the president had also recovered from his injuries. Moreover, he had also improved to the next level. Only then did Yi Shiwen feel one thing off his mind. As the saying goes, if you take someone's money, you will help them get rid of their troubles. Without the purple crystal-glazed fruit, it would not be easy for him to further advance into the half-step celestial realm in a short period of time. Now that he knew this, there was no reason for him to delay any longer. On the 11th day, he left Chaos City before the demon-suppressing city expanded their search area. His target was the Elder Demon Realm. Chapter 1453. The other side of the Devil World's channel was also surrounded by numerous cities of the Devil race. They weren't inferior to the cities of the Yi clan. However, they were divided according to the sphere of influence of the 6 great royal clans. The 8 great royal clans ruled everything in the Devil World. There were some huge clans or big clans under the 8 great royal clans. They were dependent on these 8 great royal clans in order to survive. Among these 8 great royal clans, the Fallen Angel clan and the Hidden Devil clan were very low-key. They usually gathered in their own lair. Therefore, even though they were called the 8 great royal clans, they actually had strongholds everywhere. The other 6 great royal clans had forces all over the Devil World. A handsome young fallen angel had arrived in a city under the jurisdiction of the original Devil clan on this day. He had silver-gray hair and a pair of wings on his back. This was the signature appearance of this clan. Unlike other demons who were either ferocious, terrifying, or evil, the men and women of the Fallen Angel clan were all famous for their beauty, especially the women of the Fallen Angel clan. They were not inferior to the women of the Azura clan. It seemed as if they had gathered all the beautiful elements on their bodies. The other devils looked at this fallen angel with rather unfriendly expressions. They didn't have a good expression on their faces. The Fallen Angel clan was incompatible with the devil race. They used to be the mortal enemy of the devil race. However, they had fallen and joined the devil race later on. Moreover, they had relied on their ancestor, who was faintly the strongest person in the Devil World, to occupy the position of one of the 8 great royal clans. The surrounding people's gazes were somewhat unfriendly. However, most of them were somewhat curious. There weren't many members of the Fallen Angel clan. Moreover, they were very low-key. They wouldn't easily appear in front of people under ordinary circumstances. Therefore, they were somewhat surprised to see a fallen angel at this time. The surrounding people's gazes were unfriendly. However, Yishuin didn't care. After all, this fallen angel clan wasn't someone else. He had disguised himself as one. This was the 2nd time he had disguised himself as a fallen angel. So, he was very familiar with it. The Fallen Angel clan was incompatible with the other royal clans of the Devil World. However, he had been accepted as a member of the Devil race after all. So, it couldn't be more convenient for him to walk in the Devil World as a fallen angel. Moreover, the other royal clans rejected the Fallen Angel clan. However, they were also constantly fighting amongst each other. They had been fighting non-stop for countless years. Blood had flowed like rivers. It was unknown how much blood had been spilled on each other's hands. Their bodies flowed with blazing hot magma. Yishuin had only seen this kind of creature in the biological records. This was the first time he saw a real nightmare beast. However, each of these nightmare beasts had the strength of Heaven Realm and above. They had powerful combat strength. Their 4 hooves could tear the air and were used to pull the carriage. This lineup could be said to be luxurious. Even in the Devil World, there were not many who had such a grand lineup. It was not easy for ordinary demon nobles to catch a nightmare beast. Even if it was only a law manifestation realm nightmare beast, it was extremely difficult to catch, not to mention Heaven Realm nightmare beasts. Just when Yishuin was still curious about who had such a grand lineup, the surroundings were completely noisy. Hiss, Miss Man Yun is out again. Could it be that she has the whereabouts of that human warrior, Fa Wushwang? Amidst the noise, someone's words immediately attracted Yishuin's attention. Fa Wushwang. This name was like magic, immediately attracting Yishuin's attention. He had always been very interested in this top expert ranked at the top of the hidden dragon list. It was just that he did not get to see Fa Wushwang when he went to the Wind King planet previously. Later, there was news that Fa Wushwang was now challenging the top experts on the Soaring Dragon list. For Yishuin at that time, challenging the experts on the Soaring Dragon list was still an unattainable feat. To be able to be listed on the Soaring Dragon list, the weakest was a Transcendent Realm 4th level, or 5th level expert. Ordinary people could not approach at all. At that time, his cultivation had already reached this level. Yishuin just did not expect that he would appear in the Devil World now. Moreover, he seemed to be besieged by the experts in the Devil World. It must be. Miss Man-yun chased after him so angrily. Who else could it be other than that Fa Wushwang? At this time, someone next to her said with certainty. This Fa Wushwang is really arrogant. As a human, he dares to break into the devil world alone. He is simply looking down on our devil world heroes, someone said indignantly. So what if he doesn't look up to him? If you have the ability, go and kill him. That will be fine. I didn't expect there to be such an outstanding talent among humans. He has such a cultivation at such a young age. His future is simply limitless. Such a person will be a great threat to our clan in the future. We must kill him in advance to prevent future troubles. But this Miss Man-yun has chased Fa Wushwang several times. Is there really such a huge hatred? Could it be that Fa Wushwang slept with Miss Man-yun? At this time, an obvious newcomer said with a lascivious smile. If he really slept with her, there wouldn't be so much trouble. This young hero Fa Wushwang came to the devil world and defeated many young talents in our devil world. Chapter 1454. The corner of Yishuan's mouth twitched. What kind of melodramatic plot was this? However, he couldn't tell that Fa Wushwang was an infatuated person. Between a beautiful princess of the Ashura clan and a little maid, as long as one had the slightest sense of utility, he would know which to choose. However, Fa Wushwang actually chose the maid. It could be said that he was infatuated. However, the object of his infatuation was a demon. This kind of love was destined to be unacceptable in both the human race and the demon race. However, this princess of the Ashura clan had turned into hatred because of love. Fa Wushwang's future would not be good. In this devil domain, enemies were everywhere. Without the protection of the princess of the Ashura clan, Fa Wushwang might really be unable to move an inch. Even an expert at the peak of the celestial realm would be like a mantis trying to stop a chariot in the devil domain. Miss Man-yun immediately went crazy. Don't you think this is a slap in the face? She is the dignified princess of the Ashura clan. Many highnesses have fallen in love with her, but she didn't even look at them. Instead, she fell in love with this human. Because of this, she endured a lot of pressure. Now, in exchange for this, it can be said that she is bitterly disappointed, said the old demon. What a damned human! Lady Man-yun is such a noble person. It's his great fortune that she has taken a liking to him. He's really... Many demons were so angry that their mouths were twisted. Many of them were Man-yun's admirers. It was fine that their goddess had taken a liking to a human, but she was actually humiliated by that human in such a humiliating way. How could they not be angry? So, Miss Man-yun has already ordered all the borders with the human race to allow people to enter but not to leave. Finally, Fa Wushwang was blocked. Miss Man-yun even personally teleported here to settle the score with him. Then why don't we go and watch the show? I also want to see what kind of young hero dared to sneak into the devil domain alone. Some demons were also attracted just by hearing this. After all, the demon race was still a race that worshipped the strong. Hearing that there was such a young hero, they couldn't help but be tempted. Even if it was the human race, it didn't make any difference to them. Although they were all part of the devil race, there was actually a huge difference between each race. The way they killed each other wasn't much different from the way the human race killed each other. Thinking of this, everyone present could not hold back any longer and followed after him. Even Yishuan was the same. Fa Wushwang was even more courageous than him. He had disguised himself and entered the devil world. He was extremely daring. However, Fa Wushwang had actually entered the devil world with the body of a human. His courage could be said to be unparalleled in this world. With a flap of the gray wings on his back, he streaked across the sky and followed the flow of demons out of the city. When he arrived, he immediately saw countless experts from the demon race surrounding the place from 3 layers to the left and 3 layers to the right. Those who arrived later could only use their divine sense to scan the place to see what was happening. In the center of the experts from the demon race, there was a young expert from the human race. His appearance was quite ordinary and not outstanding. However, there was a sharp aura on his body, which made him look energetic and extraordinary. He was only wearing a simple robe, but he had a different demeanor. Anyone who saw him could not help but praise him. He was really a peerless figure. Behind him was a woman who was dressed like a maid. Although her face was delicate and pretty, it couldn't be said to be a stunning beauty. It was just that she had light makeup on, yet she gave off a sense of purity. She was a succubus. Yushiwen could see at a glance that the succubus race was famous for producing handsome men and beautiful women, just like the Azura race and the fallen angel race. And these succubi were born to charm people as a means of survival. Their status was very low in the devil world. The entire race was the plaything of the high-level devils. They weren't like the fallen angel race. They were also a race that produced handsome men and beautiful women. However, the fallen angel race had countless experts. Every member of the fallen angel race was a genius. Moreover, the ancestor of the fallen angel race was currently the strongest person in the devil world. So, who would dare to look down on the fallen angel race? The succubus race wasn't as tyrannical as the fallen angel race. Therefore, they could only be reduced to the playthings of the big shots. The devil world was a world where strength was respected. However, this succubus didn't have heavy makeup on. Instead, she looked very pure and pretty. She looked delicate and pretty, but she wasn't very beautiful. The Azura princess probably hadn't expected that she would lose to such a succubus. The appearance of these two people couldn't be considered outstanding. However, they looked like celestial beings at this time. That succubus was also very rare. She wasn't like other succubi who were born with a charm. On the contrary, she had an otherworldly aura. And in front of the two of them was the carriage that Yi Shiwen had seen before. In the sky, 8 nightmare beasts were constantly roaring in a low voice, just like wild beasts. An extremely beautiful woman was standing on this gorgeous carriage. She was dressed in a gorgeous robe. She was standing on the carriage like a carriage. The Shura race was full of beauties, let alone the princess of the Shura race. She was born with beauty that could topple cities and countries. Who knew how many royal highnesses had fallen for her? This was the princess of the Shura race, Man Yun. Fa Wushuang, are you really so heartless? The Azura princess, Man Yun, looked at Fa Wushuang and said. There was a bit of tenderness in her eyes. Fa Wushuang sighed and said, It's not that I'm heartless. It's just that I can't force my feelings. If that's the case, why did you intrude into my world? Why did you tug on my heartstrings? Man Yun gritted her teeth and asked. This wasn't what I wanted, and it wasn't what I wanted, Fa Wushuang said. Ha! Just by saying that it wasn't what you wanted and it wasn't what you wanted, you can push this matter away completely? Man Yun had a somewhat miserable smile on her face. This trip to the devil world was all thanks to Miss Man Yun's protection. I will definitely repay you in the future, Fa Wushuang said firmly. I will definitely repay you. I want you to commit suicide on the spot. Is that okay? Man Yun said. I can't commit suicide. As long as it's within my capabilities, I definitely won't dare to disobey, Fa Wushuang said. Alright, I want you to kill this B*TCH in front of me, and I will let you go. From now on, you can fly as high as a bird in the sky and as a fish in the sea. No one will stop you. What do you think? Man Yun looked at the succubus behind Fa Wushuang. Her eyes were filled with deep-rooted hatred. That's impossible. I, Fa Wushuang, have an indomitable spirit. This matter is all my fault. If there's anything you want, come at me. Fa Wushuang looked at Man Yun and insisted. Alright, then don't blame me. Man Yun smiled miserably. Her eyes were filled with a deathly stillness. Her heart was like dead ashes. She was nothing more than this. Man Yun, I told you that there's no good person in the human clan. He's just playing with your feelings. Watch me kill this guy for you. As the voice faded away, a tyrannical demonic aura pierced through the sky and earth. A tyrannical expert of the Devil clan appeared in front of everyone with an arrogant voice. It was an ugly Great Azura clan member. His face was ugly and disgusting. However, he was dressed magnificently. He was a noble Great Azura of the Azura clan. Moreover, he was a highness of the Azura clan. Man Yun looked at the ugly Great Azura clan member, and then at Fa Wushuang. She could not help but reveal a look of disgust. Even though Fa Wushuang was not considered handsome, he was still extremely handsome when compared to the ugly men in the clan. Although the royal highness of the Ashura tribe was arrogant, his strength was also top-notch. He had a somewhat frightening aura that shrouded the entire area and shocked everyone's aura. The highness of the Azura clan did not care. In his opinion, Man Yun had only been temporarily bewitched by this human brat. In the end, she was still an Azura. In the end, she would still have to marry the Azura clan. As long as he got rid of this human brat, then his chances would increase greatly. Not only did Man Yun have a noble status, but she was also born in the royal family of the Azura clan. She was also favored by the great ancestor of the Azura clan. Otherwise, she would not have been allowed to marry a human warrior. Moreover, Man Yun's strength was very tyrannical. If one could marry Man Yun, there would naturally be many benefits. All of you attack! Killing this human warrior will be rewarded handsomely. Killing that bitch behind him will be the same! At this time, the highness of the Azura clan roared. Many experts of the Devil clan were eager to make a move. Although Fa Wushuang was difficult to deal with, the succubus behind him was only at the law manifestation realm. Killing her was up to them. The weakest people present were at least at the half-step celestial realm. There were also many celestial realm experts hidden among them. However, Man Yun just watched from afar. Her face was calm and her eyes were dead. It was as if she had given up hope. Clang! The highness of the Azura clan held a long spear in his hand. He directly spat out an endless strength, which constantly bloomed in the void. Boom! The void under his feet shattered. He finally made a move. Although he looked extremely ugly, his strength was tyrannical and terrifying. The entire void shattered on the spot. The long spear instantly pierced through the sky and directly stabbed at Fa Wushuang. Fa Wushuang's reaction was not slow. Countless sword energies began to condense in his hand, condensing into a golden long sword. The long sword hummed and shattered the void. This was a long sword that had drunk the blood of the highness of the Devil clan. Whoosh! The long sword instantly moved and directly slashed down at the terrifying long spear with lightning speed. Boom! You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.